Rain hammered Chicago's South Side the night Emma Vale signed her life away to a monster. 23 years old, drowning in medical bills, watching her mother die, she had nothing left except desperation. Then Dante Moretti appeared with an offer that should have terrified her. 3 years as his wife in exchange for her mother's experimental cancer treatment. No love, no freedom, just ownership. She said yes anyway. What she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the Sterile Mafia kingpin would put a baby inside her. And when his enemies discovered she carried his heir, the war began. If you want to see how far this story reaches, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. Now let's get into this. The fluorescent lights above aisle 6 had been flickering for 3 weeks straight, and Emma Vale had stopped noticing. She'd stopped noticing a lot of things lately. The way her feet screamed inside cheap sneakers after 8-hour shifts, the hollow ache in her stomach because she kept choosing between eating and paying her mother's prescriptions, the fact that she was 23 years old and her entire existence had condensed into 4 locations. This convenience store, the hospital, the bus stop, and the 1-bedroom apartment that smelled like bleached linoleum and dying hope. The clock above the register read 2:47 a.m., another 4 hours until sunrise. Another 4 hours of scanning expired energy drinks and watching junkies argue about lottery tickets while the city outside pressed against the windows like something hungry. Emma restocked cigarettes behind the counter with mechanical precision, her hands moving while her brain shut down. Survival mode. That's what the hospital social worker had called it during their last meeting, right before explaining, with that practiced, gentle voice people used when delivering bad news, that Emma's mother's insurance had reached its lifetime maximum and the experimental treatments weren't covered, and maybe it was time to consider comfort care options. Comfort care. The words people used when they meant let her die. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Northwestern Memorial's night nurse. Your mother's asking for you. Vital, stable, but agitated. She typed back with one hand while scanning a customer's beer with the other. Be there at 8. Tell her I love her. The customer, middle-aged, stained jacket, bourbon breath, slid a crumpled 20 across the counter. You look like shit, sweetheart. Thanks for shopping, Emma said flatly, handing him change without meeting his eyes. He laughed, pocketing the money. Rough night? Rough year. Ain't that the truth? He grabbed his beer and shuffled toward the door, bells chiming as he disappeared into the rain. Emma watched him go, and that's when she saw it again. The black SUV. It sat across the street beneath a broken streetlight, engine idling, windows tinted dark enough to hide anything. Anyone. She'd first noticed it 3 weeks ago, the same night her mother's doctor had delivered the timeline. 6 months, maybe 8 if they were lucky. At first, Emma thought she was paranoid, exhaustion playing tricks. But the SUV kept appearing. Outside the hospital, near the bus stop, circling the block while she locked up the store at dawn. Someone was watching her. Her manager, a 40-year-old burnout named Rick, who spent most shifts in the back office watching porn, had laughed when she mentioned it. You're not important enough to stalk, Emma. Get over yourself. But she knew. The way prey knows when something's hunting. Emma finished her shift in mechanical silence, mopping floors and restocking shelves, while her peripheral vision stayed locked on that SUV. It didn't move, didn't leave, just waited. At 6:55 a.m., she clocked out, pulled her jacket tight against the October cold, and stepped outside into rain that felt like tiny knives against her face. The SUV's headlights flicked on. Emma's pulse spiked. She walked faster, cutting down the side alley toward the bus stop, her breath coming in short bursts. Footsteps echoed behind her. Too heavy to be her imagination. She spun around. Nothing. Empty alley, just rain and shadows and the distant sound of morning traffic. Then a voice, low and smooth and utterly calm. Emma Vale, you so? She whipped back around. A man stood 5 feet away, blocking the alley exit. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from expensive stone. Tailored black suit that probably cost more than Emma made in 6 months. Hands scarred across the knuckles like he'd spent years breaking things. Or people. His eyes were the worst part. Dark. Unreadable. like looking into deep water and knowing something lived at the bottom. Emma's hand dove into her jacket pocket, fingers closing around the pepper spray she'd started carrying. "Who the hell are you?" "Someone who can help you." His voice had an accent buried underneath, geek. Italian, maybe. Refined, but dangerous. "Your mother's treatment stopped 3 weeks ago." Emma's blood turned to ice. "How do you know that?" "I know a lot of things about you, Emma." He took one step closer, and Emma raised the pepper spray between them. He didn't flinch, didn't even blink. "I know you dropped out of Northwestern 18 months ago to take care of her full time. I know you're $53,000 in medical debt. I know you haven't slept more than 4 hours a night since last winter. I know you're drowning." "Stay back," Emma's voice cracked. "I'm warning you. I'm not here to hurt you." He reached inside his jacket, and Emma's finger hovered over the pepper spray trigger. But he only pulled out a business card, thick, expensive paper with embossed lettering. He held it out. "My name is Dante Moretti, and I'm offering you a way out." Emma didn't take the card. "I don't know you." "You will." His eyes locked onto hers with unsettling intensity. "Your mother needs treatment that costs $500,000. You're working graveyard shifts at a convenience store making $12 an hour. In 6 months, she'll be dead, and you'll spend the next decade buried in debt you'll never escape. I can change that." "Why?" Emma's hand shook. "Why would you help me?" "Because I need something from you." Dante's expression didn't change, didn't soften. "And I always pay for what I need. I'm not a prostitute. I'm not asking you to be." He stepped forward again, close enough now that Emma could see the flecks of gray in his dark eyes, the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow. "I'm asking you to marry me." Emma laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound that echoed off the alley walls. "You're insane." "I'm practical." Dante's voice stayed level, like he was negotiating a business contract instead of proposing to a stranger in a rain-soaked alley at 7 in the morning. 3 years. That's all I need. 3 years as my wife, living in my home, playing the role when necessary. In exchange, I'll pay for every treatment your mother needs. Experimental trials at Johns Hopkins. The surgeries. The medications. Everything. This is a joke. Emma backed up until her shoulders hit the brick wall. This is some kind of sick... Your mother's name is Catherine Vale. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. The Northwestern Oncology team gave her 6 months, but there's a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins with a 72% remission rate. It costs $480,000. Your insurance won't cover it, but I will. Dante pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward her. Emma's breath stopped. It was her mother's medical file. Complete, detailed. Information Emma herself barely had access to. "How did you—" "I told you, I know everything about you, Emma." Dante pocketed the phone. "And I'm offering you the only chance she has. 3 years of your life for her survival. That's the deal." Emma's mind spun. This couldn't be real. Men like this, whoever he was, whatever he wanted, didn't just appear offering miracles. There had to be a catch. There was always a catch. "What do you get out of this?" she asked. "Why marriage? Why me?" "That's not your concern." "Like hell it's not." "Because I need a wife," Dante interrupted, his voice hardening. "And you need money. The reasons don't matter. Only the contract does." "You're talking about my life." "I'm talking about your mother's life." He held out the business card again. "You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires." Emma stared at the card. Heavy paper, gold lettering, an address in downtown Chicago she recognized. One of those glass towers where penthouses started at 10 million. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why would you do this?" For the first time, something flickered across Dante's face. Not kindness, not warmth, something darker, more complicated. "Because sometimes we need things we can't take," he said quietly. "And sometimes the only option is to buy them." He turned and walked away, his footsteps silent despite the rain, disappearing into the black SUV that pulled up beside him like it had been waiting for a signal Emma hadn't seen. The vehicle drove off, leaving Emma alone in the alley, shaking, holding a business card that felt like a live grenade. She looked at it. Dante Moretti. Moretti Enterprises. No phone number, just an address. Emma's hands wouldn't stop trembling. She shoved the card into her pocket and ran for the bus stop, her mind racing. Dante Moretti. She'd heard that name before, whispered in news reports about organized crime investigations that never went anywhere, mentioned in true crime podcasts about Chicago's underground networks. A ghost who controlled half the city's shipping docks and construction contracts but never appeared in public records. A criminal. A goddamn mobster. And he wanted to marry her. Emma made it to the hospital by 8:30, her clothes still damp, her head spinning. She found her mother awake, sitting up in bed, looking thinner than yesterday. Catherine Vale had been a force of nature once, a community college professor who raised Emma alone after her father walked out. Strong, sharp, unbreakable. Now she looked like paper. "You're late," Catherine said, but she was smiling. "Long shift?" Emma dropped into the chair beside the bed, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. Something like that. Catherine studied her with those professor eyes that always saw too much. "What happened?" "Nothing, I'm fine." "Emma." "Mom, talk to me." So Emma did. She told her everything. The SUV, the alley, the impossible offer. The words poured out in a rush while Catherine listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious with every sentence. When Emma finished, silence filled the hospital room. Somewhere down the hall, machines beeped. A nurse laughed at the station. Catherine took Emma's hand. Her grip was weak. "You're not considering this." "I don't know." "Emma, this man is dangerous. He's offering to save your life." "By buying you." Catherine's voice cracked. "I didn't raise you to be someone's possession. You didn't raise me to watch you die when there's an option." Emma's throat burned. "The trial at Johns Hopkins could work. 72% remission rate. That's better odds than anything else. At what cost?" Catherine squeezed her hand harder. 3 years married to a criminal? What happens after those 3 years? What does he do to you if you don't play along? "I don't know." "Exactly. You don't know, which means you can't trust him." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to say something comforting, but her mother was right. Dante Moretti was a stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere with an offer too perfect to be real. Men like that didn't give. They took. But Emma was drowning, and he'd thrown her a rope. Even if that rope was tied around her neck. She stayed at the hospital until visiting hours ended, then caught the bus back to her apartment, a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a building that should have been condemned years ago. Inside, Emma collapsed onto the couch and pulled out Dante's business card. 48 hours. She Googled his name. The results were sparse. A few mentions in business journals about real estate acquisitions and shipping contracts. One blurry photo from a charity gala where he stood in the background looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Nothing concrete, nothing damning. But the absence of information was its own answer. Men that powerful didn't stay invisible by accident. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The clock is ticking. Her heart hammered. She typed back, "Who is this?" The response came immediately. "You know who." Emma stared at the screen, adrenaline flooding her system. He was watching her, right now, somehow. She walked to the window and looked down at the street. The black SUV sat beneath the streetlight. Emma's hand shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. She yanked the curtains closed, pulse racing, mind spinning. This was insane. Accepting would be insane. Marrying a stranger, a criminal, trading 3 years of her life for a treatment that might not even work. But what was the alternative? Watch her mother die? Emma didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling while her mind ran through every possible scenario. Every risk, every outcome. By sunrise, she still didn't have an answer. The next day passed in a blur. Work. Hospital. Bus rides where Emma sat hunched in the back row, watching the SUV follow at a distance. He wasn't hiding anymore. Didn't need to. The message was clear. I'm waiting. That evening, Emma sat across from her mother in the hospital room while Catherine slept fitfully, her breathing shallow, her skin gray. 6 months. Maybe less. Emma pulled out her phone and typed, "I want to talk." The response came in seconds. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., address on the card. Emma closed her eyes. She'd already made the decision. Maybe she'd made it the moment Dante mentioned Johns Hopkins. Maybe she'd made it the first time she'd watched her mother cry in pain while nurses adjusted morphine drips. Desperation didn't leave room for smart choices. The next morning, Emma took the train downtown, dressed in the only professional clothes she owned, black slacks and a white blouse her mother had bought her for college interviews years ago. The fabric felt foreign against her skin. The address led to a glass tower that stretched 40 stories into a cloudless sky. The lobby was all marble and recessed lighting, the kind of place where Emma's secondhand clothes felt like a costume. A security guard stopped her at the desk. "Can I help you? I'm here to see Dante Moretti." The guard's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe respect, maybe fear. He picked up a phone, spoke quietly, then nodded. "Top floor, elevators on the right." Emma's legs felt like water as she stepped into the elevator. The ride up took forever and no time at all. When the doors opened, she found herself in a private foyer, more marble, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a single door at the end of the hall. It opened before she could knock. Dante stood in the doorway wearing a different suit, charcoal gray this time, looking exactly as dangerous as he had in the alley. "You came." "I had questions." "Then come inside." He stepped aside. The penthouse was obscene. Open floor plan, modern furniture that probably cost more than Emma's entire apartment building. Windows that turned the city into a backdrop. Art on the walls that looked like it belonged in museums. Emma stopped in the center of the living room, feeling desperately out of place. "You live here?" "When I'm in Chicago." Dante closed the door behind her. "Can I get you something? Coffee? Water?" Answers. He almost smiled. Almost. "Fair enough. Sit." Emma didn't sit. "Why me?" "That's what I can't figure out. You could hire an actress, a model, someone who'd jump at this without asking questions. So why track down a broke college dropout working graveyard shifts?" Dante moved to the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at the city below. For a moment, he didn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter, heavier. "Because I needed someone real," he said. "Someone with a reason to stay. Actresses can be bribed. Models can be bought by higher offers. But you," he turned to face her, "you have something worth more than money. You have someone you'd die for." "My mother." "Exactly." Dante's eyes locked onto hers. "That makes you reliable, predictable. You won't run. You won't betray me. Because the moment you do, her treatments stop." Emma's stomach turned. "You'd let her die?" "I'd honor the contract. Nothing more." His expression didn't change. "This is business, Emma, not charity. You give me 3 years. I give your mother a chance to survive. Everyone gets what they need. Except I don't know what you need. A wife. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting." Dante walked toward her, each step measured, deliberate. "You want guarantees, certainty, an explanation that makes this feel safe. I can't give you that. What I can give you is this. A legally binding contract that ensures your mother receives the best cancer treatment available. A place to live, security, stability. All you have to do is play the role." "What role?" Emma's voice rose. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Attend events with me. Appear in public as my wife when necessary. Live in this penthouse. Follow basic security protocols." He stopped 3 feet away, close enough that Emma could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "That's all." "And in private?" "You'll have your own room, your own space. I won't touch you unless absolutely necessary for appearances." His voice dropped lower. "I'm not interested in a real marriage, Emma. Just the illusion of one. For 3 years. 3 years. And then? Then you are free. I'll transfer $2 million into an account in your name. You and your mother can disappear, start over, live whatever life you want." Emma's head spun. $2 million. A number so large it didn't feel real. Combined with her mother's survival, it was everything she'd ever needed. But the cost. "I need to see the contract," she said. Dante walked to a desk near the window and pulled out a folder, thick, official-looking, the kind lawyers spent months drafting. He handed it to her. "Read it carefully. Take your time." Emma opened the folder with shaking hands. The contract was dense, pages of legal terminology that made her head hurt. But certain sections stood out. The wife agrees to reside at the husband's primary residence for the duration of the contract. The wife will attend all social functions deemed necessary by the husband. The husband will provide full financial support for Catherine Vale's medical treatments, including but not limited to experimental trials, surgeries, and long-term care. Physical intimacy is not required but may occur at the wife's discretion. Either party may terminate the contract early under the following conditions: infidelity, criminal prosecution, or death. Emma looked up. This says I can't leave the penthouse without permission. Security precaution. This says I have to attend social functions with you. Part of the role. This says, Emma's voice caught. This says you control my bank accounts. To prevent you from running, Dante's expression hardened. I told you, Emma, this is business. I'm paying $500,000 for your mother's treatment. In exchange, I get compliance, not negotiation. This is insane. This is the deal. Emma wanted to throw the contract at him, wanted to scream that he was a monster for even suggesting this. But her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another text from Northwestern Memorial. Her mother's vitals were dropping. They were increasing her morphine. She was dying. Emma looked at Dante. If I sign this, you'll start her treatment immediately, within 24 hours. And you'll follow through all 3 years? I always honor my contracts. Why should I trust you? Because you don't have a choice. Dante's voice was flat, unapologetic. Sign or don't, but the offer expires in 3 hours. Emma's vision blurred. She thought about her mother, about watching her waste away in that hospital bed, about the funeral she couldn't afford, about the life insurance that had lapsed years ago, about spending the next decade drowning in debt while grief ate her alive. Or she could sign, trade 3 years for a chance, a real chance. Her hand moved before her brain could stop it. I need a pen, she whispered. Dante handed her one, Sapo, black, expensive, heavy in her palm like a weapon. Emma signed her name at the bottom of the contract in shaking handwriting. Catherine Vale's daughter, college dropout, convenience store clerk, Dante Moretti's wife. He took the contract, studied her signature, then nodded once. We'll get married tomorrow, City Hall, 2 p.m. Wear something simple. That's it? That's it. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Start the transfers. Johns Hopkins clinical trial. Full authorization. He hung up and looked at Emma. Your mother's treatment begins Monday. Emma's legs gave out. She collapsed into the nearest chair, her entire body shaking. What had she done? What the hell had she just done? Dante crouched in front of her, his eyes level with hers. For the first time, his expression softened slightly. Not kindness, just something less cold. You made the right choice, he said quietly. I'll take care of her, that's my promise. And what about me? Emma's voice cracked. What happens to me? Dante stood, his face returning to stone. You survive, just like you've been doing. He walked away, leaving Emma alone in the penthouse, holding a signed contract that felt like a noose tightening around her throat. Outside the windows, Chicago stretched endlessly in every direction. Somewhere in that city, Emma's mother was dying. And somewhere in this penthouse, Emma had just sold her soul to save her. The next day passed in a fog. Emma went through the motions, showering, dressing, riding in the black SUV to City Hall, where Dante waited in another flawless suit. The ceremony lasted 7 minutes. A judge who looked bored. 2 witnesses Emma didn't recognize. Vows she spoke in a monotone while Dante's voice stayed steady and calm. I do. I do. The judge pronounced them married. Dante slid a ring onto Emma's finger. Platinum, embedded with diamonds that probably cost more than her mother's house. It felt like a shackle. They signed the marriage certificate in silence. Dante's signature was sharp and precise. Emma's was barely legible. And just like that, she became Emma Moretti. The SUV drove them back to the penthouse. Emma sat pressed against the window, staring at the city, feeling like she was watching her old life disappear behind tinted glass. When they arrived, Dante led her upstairs to a bedroom on the east side of the penthouse. Massive, modern, with its own bathroom and walk-in closet filled with clothes she didn't own. This is yours, he said. My room is on the west side. We won't cross paths unless necessary. Emma stepped inside. The bed was the size of her entire apartment. When do I start, whatever this is? Tonight. Dante checked his watch. There's a gala at the Drake Hotel, charity event, politicians, business contacts. We'll make our first appearance as husband and wife. I don't have anything to wear. Check the closet. Emma opened it. Dresses, dozens of them, evening gowns in every color, all tailored to her exact measurements. She pulled one out, deep emerald silk that probably cost thousands. How did you know my size? I know everything about you, Emma. Dante's voice came from the doorway. Don't forget that. He left. Emma stood alone in the massive bedroom, holding a dress that cost more than she'd made in 6 months, and finally let herself cry. 3 years. She'd survived worse. She had to. That evening, Emma stood in front of the mirror wearing the emerald dress, her hair styled by someone Dante had sent to the penthouse, makeup applied by hands that weren't hers. She looked like someone else. Someone who belonged in Dante Moretti's world. Someone who wasn't drowning. Dante appeared behind her in the reflection, dressed in a black tuxedo that made him look like something out of a movie. Dangerous and elegant and completely untouchable. Ready? He asked. No. Good. That'll make it more convincing. The Drake Hotel was everything Emma expected. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, men in tuxedos, and women in gowns that cost more than cars. Champagne flowed. Conversations hummed. Everyone looked rich and powerful and utterly comfortable in a world Emma had only ever seen in movies. Dante's hand settled on the small of her back as they entered, and Emma felt every eye in the room turn toward them. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Is that Dante Moretti? Who's the girl? His wife? Dante leaned close to her ear. Smile. Emma forced her lips into something resembling a smile while her heart hammered. They moved through the gala like sharks through water, Dante shaking hands, introducing Emma as my wife, in that calm, controlled voice while she nodded and smiled and tried not to scream. People stared, asked questions, congratulated them. Emma answered on autopilot while Dante's hand never left her back, a constant reminder of the contract she'd signed. Then someone approached them, a man in his 50s, silver-haired, expensive suit, with eyes that lingered too long on Emma. Dante, he said warmly, quite the surprise. I didn't know you were getting married. Neither did anyone else, Vincent. Dante's voice stayed pleasant, but Emma felt him tense beside her. Emma, this is Vincent Calabrese, an old business associate. Vincent extended his hand. Emma shook it, and his grip lingered. Beautiful girl. How did someone like Dante convince someone like you to marry him? Charm, Emma said flatly. Vincent laughed. I like her. I'm sure you do. Dante's hand pressed harder against Emma's back. If you'll excuse us. Actually, I wanted to discuss the dockyard contracts, Vincent interrupted, his smile not reaching his eyes. Heard you've been making moves. Expanding territory. Not here. No? Where then? The air between them shifted, grew heavier. Emma didn't understand what was happening, but she felt it, like watching two predators circle each other. My office, Dante said coldly. Next week. Looking forward to it. Vincent's eyes flicked to Emma one more time. Congratulations on the marriage. Hope it lasts. He walked away. Emma exhaled shakily. What was that? Nothing you need to worry about. Dante guided her toward the exit, his jaw tight. We're leaving. We just got here. Now. They left. The SUV was waiting. Emma climbed inside while Dante made a phone call in Italian. Sharp, angry words Emma didn't understand. When he finally hung up, silence filled the vehicle like smoke. What just happened? Emma asked. Vincent Calabrese runs the South Side distribution network, Dante said without looking at her. He's been trying to expand into my territory for 6 months. Tonight was a warning. A warning about what? That he knows I got married, which means he knows I have something to lose now. Emma's blood ran cold. Me. You. Dante finally turned to face her, and his expression was the hardest she'd seen yet. Which is why you'll follow every security protocol I set. No leaving the penthouse without clearance. No contact with anyone I haven't vetted. No mistakes. You're serious. Deadly. He leaned forward. You signed a contract, Emma. That means you're mine now. And people will try to use that against me. So you'll do exactly what I say, when I say it. Understand? Emma wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to go to hell, but the look in his eyes stopped her. She'd married a criminal, and now she was part of his world. I understand, she whispered. Good. They rode the rest of the way in silence. When they reached the penthouse, Emma went straight to her room and locked the door. She sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the emerald dress, and pulled out her phone. A text from her mother. How was your day, sweetheart? Emma typed back with shaking hands. Long. I'll call you tomorrow. I love you. She deleted the message and rewrote it 3 times before finally sending it. Then she lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering how long 3 years would actually feel. Wondering if she'd survive them. Wondering what the hell Dante Moretti had really bought when he put that ring on her finger. Outside her window, Chicago glittered like broken glass. And somewhere in the penthouse, Emma heard Dante's door close. 2 strangers, 1 contract, 3 years. The clock had started ticking. Emma woke to silence so complete it felt like being underwater. For 3 seconds, she didn't remember where she was. Then the weight of the platinum ring on her finger dragged her back into reality. The penthouse, the contract, the fact that she'd married a stranger 48 hours ago and signed away 3 years of her life. She rolled over and checked her phone. 6:47 a.m. A text from Northwestern Memorial glowed on the screen. Catherine Vale transferred to Johns Hopkins this morning. Treatment begins today. All expenses covered. Emma's chest tightened. Her mother was safe. That was what mattered. That was the only thing that mattered. She dragged herself out of bed and into the bathroom, all marble and chrome, bigger than her old apartment's entire kitchen. The shower had 17 different settings. Emma picked one at random and stood under water hot enough to scald while her mind spun in circles. This was her life now. This sterile glass cage 50 stories above a city that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that probably cost more than her weekly paycheck used to, she found clothes laid out on the bed. Jeans, a sweater, simple but expensive, tags still attached. Size 4. Her exact size. I know everything about you, Emma, Dante's voice echoed in her head. She dressed quickly, hating how perfectly everything fit, and opened the bedroom door. The penthouse was empty. Silent. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, turning Chicago into something beautiful and distant. Emma walked through the space like a ghost, touching furniture she was afraid to sit on, staring at art she didn't understand. In the kitchen, all stainless steel and granite countertops, she found a note written in sharp, precise handwriting. Had to leave early. Security will arrive at 8. Don't leave the penthouse. D. Emma crumpled the note in her fist. Don't leave the penthouse, like she was a child, like she was property. She made coffee with a machine that probably required a PhD to operate, then stood at the window watching the city wake up below. People moved like ants through the streets. Free. Unaware that 50 stories above them, a girl had just traded her life for her mother's survival. The elevator chimed at exactly 8 o'clock. Emma turned, heart hammering, as 3 men stepped into the penthouse. The first was maybe 30, built like he'd spent years in a gym or a war zone with a scar cutting through his jaw. The second was older, 50s, gray-haired, with eyes that cataloged everything in seconds. The third was young, couldn't have been more than 25, trying too hard to look tough. The scarred one spoke first. Mrs. Moretti. Emma hated the sound of that name attached to her. Emma. Luca Vescari. He didn't offer his hand. Head of security, this is Marco and Tony. We'll be your detail. My detail? Mr. Moretti's orders. Luca's expression didn't change. You don't go anywhere without one of us present. You don't answer the door. You don't take calls from numbers we haven't cleared. You follow protocols exactly as outlined. I'm not a prisoner. No, ma'am. You're an asset. Luca's voice was flat, professional, which means keeping you alive is our job, and we're very good at our jobs. Emma's stomach turned. Asset. Not a person. Not even a wife. Just something valuable that needed protecting. What protocols? She asked. Marco, the older one, pulled out a tablet and handed it to her. It's all here. Approved locations, approved contacts, security codes, emergency procedures. Emma scrolled through the list. It was pages long, detailed, suffocating. Approved locations: Penthouse, Northwestern Memorial Hospital, supervised visits only. Johns Hopkins Medical Center, advance notice required. Moretti Enterprises headquarters, emergency only. Prohibited locations: previous residence, former workplace, public transit, unvetted restaurants or shops. Approved contacts: Catherine Vale, mother; Dr. Sarah Chen, oncologist; Dante Moretti, husband. All other contacts require clearance. Emma looked up. This says I can't talk to anyone. Anyone we haven't vetted, Luca corrected. Friends, former coworkers, anyone who knew you before the marriage. Their liabilities. Their people. Their vulnerabilities. Luca took the tablet back. You signed a contract, Mrs. Moretti. Part of that contract included security compliance. We're just doing our jobs. Emma wanted to throw something. Wanted to scream that this was insane, that Dante had no right to isolate her like this. But the words died in her throat because she knew the truth. She'd signed the contract. She'd agreed to this. And her mother's treatment had already started. Fine, Emma said through clenched teeth. What now? Now you go about your day. Luca gestured toward the living room. We'll be here. You won't notice us. I'm already noticing you. You'll get used to it. Emma doubted that. She spent the rest of the morning trying to exist in a space that felt more like a museum than a home, acutely aware of 3 armed men watching her every move. She tried reading. There was a library filled with books she'd never heard of. She tried watching TV, a screen the size of a small car that made her feel ridiculous. Finally, she settled on the couch with her phone, scrolling through news articles about nothing, just trying to pass time. At noon, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered before thinking. Hello? Mrs. Moretti. A woman's voice, crisp and professional. This is Dr. Sarah Chen from Johns Hopkins. I'm calling regarding your mother's treatment. Emma sat up straight. Is she okay? She's doing well. We've begun the first round of targeted therapy, and her initial response is positive. I wanted to schedule a time for you to visit. Your husband mentioned you'd want to be involved in the care decisions. He did. Yes, he was very clear about that. Dr. Chen's voice softened slightly. He also mentioned you'd been her primary caregiver. I'd like to discuss the treatment plan with you directly. Emma's chest tightened. Dante had thought of that, had made sure Emma would be included. When can I visit? She asked. This week would be ideal. I'll coordinate with your security team to arrange transport. Security team. The word sounded ridiculous. Okay. Thank you. Of course. Your mother's in good hands, Mrs. Moretti. Emma hung up and found Luca watching her from across the room. I need to visit Johns Hopkins this week. I'll arrange it. He pulled out his phone. When? As soon as possible. Tomorrow work? Emma nodded, throat tight. Tomorrow she'd see her mother. Tomorrow she'd know if signing her life away had been worth it. The rest of the day crawled by. Emma tried to sleep but couldn't, tried to eat but her stomach rejected everything. By evening, she was pacing the penthouse like a caged animal, feeling the walls close in. At 8 o'clock, the elevator chimed again. Dante stepped out, still wearing his suit from mourning, looking like he'd spent the day building empires or destroying them. His eyes found Emma immediately. How was your day? He asked, like this was normal, like they were a real married couple having a normal conversation. Suffocating, Emma said flatly. Dante loosened his tie. You'll adjust. Will I? Everyone does. He walked past her toward the kitchen, pulled a bottle of whiskey from a cabinet, poured 2 fingers into a glass. Dr. Chen called me, said your mother's responding well to treatment. She called me too. Good. Dante drank half the whiskey in one swallow. You're visiting tomorrow. Luca will drive you. I know. He told me. Emma crossed her arms. Do you always monitor my calls? I monitor everything that affects my assets. Stop calling me that. Dante's eyes snapped to hers. What would you prefer? Wife? That's just as much a fiction. How about my name? Emma. He said it slowly, deliberately. Does that make you feel better? No. Emma's voice shook. Nothing about this makes me feel better. I'm locked in a penthouse with armed guards watching me like I'm going to bolt. I can't talk to anyone, can't go anywhere, can't even breathe without someone monitoring it. That's the deal. The deal is prison. The deal is safety. Dante set his glass down hard. You think I'm doing this to punish you? Vincent Calabrese spent the last 2 days asking questions about you, where you came from, who you are, why I married someone nobody's ever heard of. He's testing for weaknesses, and the moment he finds one, he'll what? Emma interrupted. Hurt me? Kill me? Use me against you? All of the above. Dante's voice went cold. So yes, Emma, you're locked in a penthouse with armed guards. Because the alternative is you ending up in a room with men like Vincent, and I've seen what happens to women in those rooms. It's not pretty. Emma's breath caught. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to keep you alive. Dante picked up his glass again, finished the whiskey. Your mother's treatment started today because I kept my word. Now you keep yours. Follow the protocols. Stay safe. Survive 3 years. Then you're free. I'm not free now. No, Dante agreed. You're not. He walked away, disappearing into his side of the penthouse, leaving Emma standing in the living room feeling like she'd just lost an argument she didn't know how to win. That night, Emma lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence press against her ears. At some point past midnight, she heard movement from Dante's side of the penthouse. Footsteps. The sound of glass clinking. More footsteps. He couldn't sleep either. Emma closed her eyes and tried to pretend the next 3 years wouldn't destroy her. The drive to Johns Hopkins took 4 hours. Emma sat in the back of the SUV with Luca beside her and Marco driving, watching Pennsylvania blur past the windows. Tony followed in a second vehicle, backup apparently, in case someone tried to run them off the road. The paranoia was exhausting. Johns Hopkins Medical Center was massive, glass and steel, and the kind of place where miracles happened if you could afford them. Luca escorted Emma through security checkpoints and endless hallways until they reached the oncology wing. Dr. Chen met them outside her mother's room. She was younger than Emma expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and the steady voice of someone who delivered bad news for a living. Your mother's resting, Dr. Chen said, but she's been asking for you. Emma's throat tightened. Can I see her? Of course. Dr. Chen pushed open the door. Catherine Vale sat propped up in bed, looking small and fragile, but more alert than Emma had seen her in months. Her eyes lit up when Emma entered. Baby! Catherine's voice cracked. Emma crossed the room in 3 steps and threw her arms around her mother, careful not to disturb the IV lines running into her arm. Catherine hugged back, her grip weak but present. I'm here, Emma whispered. I'm right here. They held each other while Dr. Chen quietly left the room. Luca waited outside, giving them privacy. For 5 minutes, Emma just breathed in the scent of her mother. Hospital soap and sickness, but alive. Still alive. Finally, Catherine pulled back, studying Emma's face. You look tired. I'm fine. You're lying. Catherine reached up and touched Emma's cheek. What's he like? Your husband. Emma didn't know how to answer that. Complicated. Is he good to you? He's keeping his word. Emma sat on the edge of the bed. Your treatment started. That's what matters. No. Catherine's voice firmed. You matter. Don't lose yourself in this, Emma. Don't let him take everything. I won't. But even as she said it, Emma wasn't sure she believed it. They spent 2 hours together. Dr. Chen came back, explained the treatment protocol, targeted therapy combined with immunotherapy, aggressive but with promising results in trials. The side effects would be brutal, nausea, fatigue, hair loss. But Catherine was strong enough to handle it. We're cautiously optimistic, Dr. Chen said. Her initial response is better than expected. Emma clung to those words. Cautiously optimistic. It was more hope than she'd had in months. When visiting hours ended, Emma kissed her mother's forehead and promised to come back soon. Catherine held her hand tight. Be careful, Catherine whispered. Men like Dante Moretti don't give without taking something in return. I know. Do you? Emma pulled away before her mother could see the truth in her eyes. The drive back to Chicago was silent. Emma watched the landscape blur past while her mind spun. Her mother was alive. Getting treatment. That was worth everything. wasn't it? They reached the penthouse after dark. Emma went straight to her room, exhausted, emotionally wrung out. She'd just changed into sleep clothes when someone knocked on her door. "Come in," she said without thinking. Dante entered, still wearing his suit, looking like he hadn't slept in days. How was she? Responding well. Dr. Chen said she's optimistic. Good. Dante stayed near the doorway, keeping distance. I wanted to make sure you got back safely. Your security team made sure of that. They're competent. They're suffocating. Emma sat on the bed. I can't live like this, Dante. Watched every second, reported on, monitored. You'll get used to it. Stop saying that. Emma's voice rose. I'm not going to get used to being a prisoner. I'm not going to adjust to having no freedom. This isn't normal. Nothing about my life is normal. Dante's jaw tightened. And now it's your life too. For 3 years. For 3 years, he agreed. Then you're free. Free, Emma laughed bitterly. You keep using that word. I don't think you know what it means. Dante's expression darkened. He stepped further into the room, and Emma's pulse spiked. He moved with the same controlled precision she'd noticed that first night in the alley. Like violence was always an option, just waiting beneath the surface. You want to know what freedom means? Dante's voice dropped low. It means your mother dying in a county hospital because you couldn't afford treatment. It means spending the next decade working 3 jobs to pay off debt you'll never escape. It means watching everyone you love suffer while you drown. That's freedom without resources, Emma. At least here you're drowning in comfort. That's not freedom. That's just a nicer cage. Then maybe freedom is overrated. Dante turned toward the door. Get some sleep. We have an event tomorrow night. What event? Fundraiser, art gallery opening. The mayor will be there, city council, people who matter. He glanced back at her. Wear something formal. We leave at 7. Emma wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to go alone. But the contract was clear. She attended social functions when required. Fine, she said through clenched teeth. Dante left without another word. Emma fell back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls press closer. This was her life now. Events and protocols and armed guards, playing the role of Dante Moretti's wife while slowly disappearing into the fiction. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but all she could hear was her mother's warning echoing in her head. Men like Dante Moretti don't give without taking something in return. What had he taken? Emma was starting to realize she didn't know yet. The next evening, Emma stood in front of the mirror wearing a black gown someone had delivered that afternoon. It was stunning, elegant, sophisticated, cut to fit her body like it had been made specifically for her, because it probably had been. Her hair was styled, makeup perfect, jewelry, diamonds and platinum, glittering at her throat and wrists. She looked like someone important. She felt like a fraud. Dante appeared behind her, adjusting his cufflinks. He wore a tuxedo that made him look like he'd stepped out of some old Hollywood film. Dangerous and untouchable. Ready? He asked. Do I have a choice? No? At least he was honest. The art gallery was in River North's, all exposed brick and modern installations that Emma didn't understand. The crowd was the same as the Drake Hotel Gala, wealthy, powerful, pretending to care about art while really networking. Dante's hand settled on Emma's lower back as they entered. She was starting to hate that touch, possessive, constant, reminding her who owned her. People swarmed them immediately. Congratulations. Questions. Thinly veiled curiosity about where Emma had come from and why Dante had married her. Emma smiled until her face hurt, answering questions with practiced vagueness while Dante steered her through the crowd like a dancer leading a partner through choreography. Then she saw Vincent Calabrese. He stood near a sculpture Emma didn't recognize, holding champagne, watching them with those predator eyes. When their gazes met, he smiled. Emma's stomach dropped. He's here, she whispered to Dante. I know. Dante's hand pressed harder against her back. Stay close. Vincent approached them slowly, deliberately, cutting through the crowd like a shark through water. When he reached them, his smile widened. Dante, Emma. He nodded at each of them. Lovely evening. Vincent. Dante's voice stayed neutral. Didn't expect to see you here. I'm full of surprises. Vincent's eyes locked on Emma. How are you settling into married life, Mrs. Moretti? Fine, Emma said carefully. I imagine it's quite an adjustment, going from… He paused, letting the silence hang. Well, wherever you came from, to all this. The insult was subtle but clear. Emma felt Dante tense beside her. Emma's adjusting perfectly, Dante said coldly. I'm sure she is. Vincent sipped his champagne. Though I have to admit the marriage caught everyone off guard. Very sudden, very unexpected. That was the point. Was it? Vincent's smile didn't waver. Or was it necessity? The air between them shifted, grew heavier. Emma didn't understand what was happening, but she felt the threat like electricity against her skin. Dante's voice went deadly quiet. Careful, Vincent. I'm always careful. Vincent's eyes flicked to Emma one more time. Congratulations again. On your union. He walked away. Emma exhaled shakily. What just happened? He's testing boundaries. Dante's jaw was tight enough to crack teeth, seeing how far he can push before I react. Why? Because if I react publicly, I look weak. If I don't react at all, I look vulnerable. Dante's hand dropped from Emma's back. It's a game. He's trying to provoke me. By insulting your wife? By suggesting my wife is a weakness. Dante turned to face her, and for the first time, Emma saw something that might have been concern in his eyes. Which is why you need to be perfect tonight. No mistakes, no cracks. If Vincent thinks he can get to me through you, I understand, Emma interrupted. I'm an asset. I need to perform. Something flickered across Dante's face. That's not what I meant, isn't it? Before Dante could answer, the mayor approached them, pulling them into another round of conversations and false smiles. Emma went through the motions, playing her role, trying not to think about Vincent Calabrese watching them from across the room. The rest of the evening blurred together. Emma drank champagne she didn't want, smiled at people she'd never see again, and felt herself disappearing inch by inch into the fiction of Dante Moretti's wife. By the time they left, she was exhausted. The SUV ride back to the penthouse was silent. Dante stared out the window, his expression unreadable. Emma could feel tension radiating off him like heat. When they finally reached the penthouse, Dante went straight to the bar and poured himself whiskey. Not 2 fingers this time, half a glass. Emma kicked off her heels and collapsed onto the couch. Can I ask you something? No? Why does Vincent hate you? Dante drank half the whiskey in one swallow. He doesn't hate me. He wants what I have. Which is? Territory, power, control. Dante poured more whiskey. Vincent runs the south side. I run the north. For years we've maintained a balance, but balance requires trust. And trust is a commodity neither of us can afford anymore. Because you got married. Because I showed vulnerability. Dante's voice was bitter. The moment I put a ring on your finger, I gave Vincent leverage. A target. Something he can use against me. Emma's chest tightened. So I'm a liability. You're a complication. Dante finally looked at her. One I chose, but a complication nonetheless. Then why do it? Emma stood, anger rising. If marrying me made you vulnerable, why go through with it? Why not hire an actress like I suggested? Why track me down specifically? Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he drained the rest of his whiskey and set the glass down hard enough to crack. Because I needed someone real, he said quietly. Someone who wouldn't run. Someone who had too much to lose. So you found someone desperate. I found someone strong. Dante's eyes locked onto hers. You survived caring for your mother alone for 18 months. You worked yourself to exhaustion. You didn't break. That's not desperation, Emma. That's strength. And I needed that strength. For what? To survive being married to me. The words hung in the air between them. Emma didn't know how to respond, didn't know if she wanted to. Dante walked away, disappearing into his side of the penthouse, leaving Emma alone with the echo of his confession. She stood there for a long time, staring at the empty whiskey glass, trying to understand what had just happened. Dante Moretti had just admitted he needed her, not as an asset, as something more. Emma went to bed that night with her mind spinning. She lay in the dark, listening to sounds from Dante's side of the penthouse. Footsteps, glass clinking, the low murmur of a phone conversation in Italian. He was awake too, restless. Whatever game Vincent Calabrese was playing, it was getting to him. Emma closed her eyes and tried to sleep, but every time she started to drift, she saw Vincent's face. That predatory smile, those calculating eyes. "How are you settling into married life, Mrs. Moretti?" The question had sounded innocent, but the subtext was clear. "How long until you break?" Emma rolled over and stared at the window. Chicago glittered beyond the glass. A city full of people living normal lives. People who didn't have armed guards or threatening mobsters, or husbands who drank whiskey at midnight while pacing penthouse floors. People who were free. Emma wasn't free. She was an asset, a complication, a target Vincent Calabrese could use to hurt Dante. And the worst part? She was starting to care whether Dante got hurt. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of routines and restrictions. Emma visited her mother 3 times, each trip carefully coordinated with security, each visit monitored. Catherine's treatment was working. Her color improved. Her strength returned slowly. Dr. Chen remained cautiously optimistic. It was the only good thing in Emma's life. The rest was suffocating. Wake up, eat breakfast, sit in the penthouse while armed guards watched her. Attend events with Dante where they played the perfect married couple. Come home, go to bed, repeat. Emma started noticing things about Dante she hadn't seen before. The way he never slept more than 4 hours. The rosary he kept on his nightstand. She'd seen it once when his bedroom door was open. The way he watched her when he thought she wasn't looking, like he was trying to solve an equation. The way his voice softened whenever he said her name. He was lonely, Emma realized, powerful, feared, but utterly alone. Just like her. One night, 3 weeks into the marriage, Emma woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of breaking glass. She sat up, heart hammering, listening. Silence. Then footsteps. Heavy. Uneven. Emma grabbed her phone and crept to the bedroom door. She opened it slowly, peeking into the hallway. The living room lights were on. Dante stood near the window, staring out at the city. His shirt was unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up, revealing the scars Emma had noticed on his hands extending up his forearms. A whiskey glass lay shattered on the floor near his feet. He looked destroyed. Emma should have gone back to her room, should have let him have his privacy. But something pulled her forward, some stupid, dangerous instinct that made her walk into the living room and stand a few feet away. "Dante?" He didn't turn. "Go back to bed." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." Emma pointed at his hand. Blood dripped from a cut on his palm where he must have grabbed the broken glass. Dante looked down at his hand like he'd forgotten it was attached to him. "It's nothing." "It's not nothing." Emma moved closer. "You need to clean that." "Emma, sit down." To her surprise, he did. Dante sank onto the couch, still staring at nothing, while Emma went to the kitchen and grabbed the first aid kit she'd seen under the sink. She came back, knelt in front of him, and took his injured hand in hers. Up close, the scars were worse. Old burns, knife wounds, things Emma didn't want to think about. "What happened?" she asked quietly, cleaning the cut with antiseptic. "Couldn't sleep." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one you're getting." But Dante's voice lacked its usual edge. He sounded tired, worn down. Emma bandaged his hand in silence. When she finished, she should have walked away, should have gone back to her room. Instead, she stayed kneeling in front of him. "Why can't you sleep?" Dante's eyes finally met hers. "Because every time I close my eyes, I see all the things I've done, all the people I've hurt, all the mistakes I can't undo." The confession hung in the air between them. Emma had never heard him sound like this. Vulnerable. Human. "Is that why you married me?" she asked. "To feel like you're doing something good?" "Maybe." Dante's jaw tightened. "Or maybe I just wanted to pretend I could be someone different. Someone worth saving." "You think I can save you?" "No." Dante pulled his hand away gently. "I think you're the only person who hasn't tried to." Emma didn't know what to say to that. She stood up, backing away, suddenly aware of how intimate this moment had become. "Get some sleep," she said quietly. "I'll try." Emma went back to her room, but she didn't sleep. She lay in bed replaying the conversation, trying to understand what had just happened. Dante Moretti, the terrifying crime lord, the man who controlled half of Chicago, had just shown her his wounds, and Emma had felt something shift inside her chest. Something dangerous. Something that felt like the beginning of caring. The next morning, Emma woke to find Dante already gone. A note on the kitchen counter said he had meetings all day and wouldn't be back until evening. Emma spent the day in the penthouse, restless, feeling the walls close in. Luca and his team were there, silent shadows watching her every move. She tried reading, tried watching TV, tried anything to make time pass. At noon, her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Hello? Silence. Then a man's voice, smooth and familiar. Mrs. Moretti. Emma's blood ran cold. Who is this? You know who this is? Vincent Calabrese. I wanted to have a conversation, woman to woman, so to speak. I have nothing to say to you. That's a shame, because I have quite a bit to say to you. Vincent's voice carried amusement. About your husband, about the man you married, about the things he hasn't told you. Emma's pulse spiked. I'm hanging up. He's sterile, you know. Vincent said it casually, like discussing weather. Had himself fixed years ago. Said he'd never bring a child into his world. Said he'd never subject anyone to the legacy he carries. Emma's breath caught. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm curious. Vincent's tone sharpened. Why would a man who swore never to have children suddenly marry? Why the rush? Why you? That's none of your business. Everything about Dante Moretti is my business, and you're part of him now, whether you like it or not. Vincent paused. Be careful, Mrs. Moretti. Men like your husband don't just want wives, they want possessions. And when possessions break, well, we've both seen what happens then. The line went dead. Emma stood frozen, phone shaking in her hand. Sterile. Dante was sterile. He'd had himself fixed deliberately, never wanted children. So why marry her? What was the real reason? Emma's mind raced. The contract had specified 3 years. Playing a role, appearing in public as his wife. But it had never mentioned children. Never mentioned family, just ownership. Before Emma could process further, the penthouse elevator chimed. But it wasn't Dante. It was Luca, and his expression was grim. We need to move you, now. Emma's stomach dropped. What happened? Someone leaked your location to a news outlet. There are reporters downstairs. Paparazzi. They know who you are. Luca was already moving, gesturing to Marco and Tony. We're taking you to a safe house until Mr. Moretti handles it. Handles what? The story. Luca grabbed Emma's arm, not roughly but firmly. Someone sold information about your background, the convenience store, your mother's illness, the marriage timeline. It's all over the internet. Emma's vision blurred. How? That's what Mr. Moretti is finding out. Luca pulled her toward the elevator. But right now, we need to get you somewhere secure. Emma let herself be dragged into the elevator, her mind spinning. Someone had exposed her. Someone had dug into her past and sold it to the press. And she had a terrible feeling she knew who. Vincent Calabrese. The safe house was 40 minutes outside Chicago. A nondescript 2-story in a quiet suburb that looked like every other house on the block. Inside, it was sparse, functional, just furniture and security equipment. Emma sat on a couch in the living room while Luca made phone calls in the kitchen. Marco and Tony checked windows and doors. The routine was efficient, practiced, like they'd done this before. Emma pulled out her phone and searched her own name. The headlines hit her like punches. Who is Emma Moretti? The mystery wife of Chicago's most dangerous man from convenience store, clerk to mafia queen, the Cinderella story. Nobody saw coming. Dante Moretti's secret marriage, what we know about Emma Vale. Emma clicked on the first article. Her stomach turned. They had everything. Photos of her old apartment building, interviews with her former manager at the convenience store, details about her mother's cancer, speculation about why Dante had married her. Sources close to the couple suggest the marriage was transactional. A desperate woman in need of money and a powerful man in need of respectability. Emma's hands shook. This was worse than she'd imagined. Her entire life exposed, dissected, turned into gossip. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. "Are you safe?" Emma typed back. "Yes. Luca got me out. Good. Stay there. I'm handling this." "How?" No response. Emma sat in the safe house living room, surrounded by armed guards, and realized the truth with nauseating clarity. This was never going to end. Vincent Calabrese had just declared war, and Emma was the battlefield. Hours passed. Emma tried to sleep but couldn't. She paced the safe house, watching night fall beyond the windows, feeling trapped all over again. At midnight, the front door opened. Dante walked in looking like he'd been through hell, tie gone, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot. He saw Emma immediately. "Are you hurt?" he asked. "No." "Good." Dante turned to Luca. "Get out. All of you." Luca hesitated. "Sir?" "Out." The security team left. The door closed. Emma and Dante stood alone in the living room, tension crackling between them, like live wire. "I'm sorry," Dante said finally. "I should have anticipated this." "Vincent did this." "I know. He called me today, before everything broke. He was fishing for information, testing me." Emma's voice rose. "He told me you're sterile, that you swore never to have children. Is that true?" Dante's expression went carefully blank. "Yes." "Then why marry me?" Emma stepped closer. "Why go through all of this if you never wanted a family?" "Because I needed a wife, not a family." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting." Dante's voice hardened. "I hired you to play a role, Emma. That role doesn't include questioning my choices." "I'm not your employee." "Yes, you are." Dante's eyes went cold. "You signed a contract. I'm paying for your mother's treatment. That makes this a business arrangement, nothing more." The words hit Emma like slaps. She stepped back, feeling something crack inside her chest. "You're right," she said quietly. "This is business. I keep forgetting that." She turned to walk away, but Dante grabbed her wrist. Not hard, just enough to stop her. "Emma!" "Don't." Emma pulled free. "You've made yourself very clear. I'm an employee, an asset, something you bought. I won't forget again." She walked to the bedroom Luca had shown her earlier and locked the door behind her. Inside, alone, Emma finally let herself cry. Not because Dante had been cruel, but because, for a moment, kneeling in front of him at 2 a.m., bandaging his hand, Emma had started to believe they could be something other than a contract. She'd been wrong, and now Vincent Calabrese knew exactly where to strike. The next morning, Emma woke to find Dante gone. Luca knocked on her door at 8. "We're moving you back to the penthouse," he said. "Mr. Moretti handled the press situation." "How?" "You'll see." The drive back to Chicago was silent. When they reached the penthouse, Emma turned on the TV and found Dante's face on every news channel. He was holding a press conference. Standing behind a podium, looking every inch the powerful businessman, Dante addressed the cameras with perfect composure. "The recent speculation about my marriage is invasive and inaccurate," he said calmly. "My wife and I met 2 years ago. We kept our relationship private due to the nature of my business interests. The marriage is legitimate, the love is real, and anyone who continues to harass my wife or her family will face legal consequences." He said it so smoothly, so convincingly. Emma watched him lie to the entire city without blinking. The love is real. It wasn't. None of it was. But Chicago believed him. The press conference worked. Within hours, the narrative shifted. Instead of scandal, it became a romance. The powerful man who fell for the girl from nothing. A modern fairy tale. Emma wanted to throw something. That evening, Dante returned to the penthouse. He looked exhausted. "It's handled," he said. "I saw." "Good." Dante poured himself whiskey. "Vincent made his move. I countered. It's done." "Is it?" Emma crossed her arms. "Because it feels like it's just beginning." Dante drank half the whiskey. "Maybe." "What happens next?" "We keep going. Play the role. Wait for Vincent to show his hand again." Dante's jaw tightened. "And this time, I'll be ready." Emma stared at him. This man she'd married, this stranger she was starting to understand, and felt something dangerous settle in her chest. This wasn't over. Vincent Calabrese had drawn first blood, and Emma realized with cold, sharp clarity that she was no longer just watching this war. She was in it. 3 weeks later, everything changed. Emma woke one morning feeling wrong, nauseated, dizzy. She dragged herself to the bathroom and threw up. Food poisoning, she thought. Bad shrimp from the restaurant event Dante had dragged her to last night. But the nausea didn't stop. It lasted 3 days. Emma tried to hide it, but Luca noticed. He insisted she see a doctor. They went to a private clinic Dante's people used. Discreet, secure. The doctor ran tests while Emma sat in an examination room feeling progressively worse. When the doctor came back, her expression was carefully neutral. "Mrs. Moretti?" she said gently. "You're pregnant." Emma's entire world stopped. "That's not possible." "The blood test is very clear. You're approximately 6 weeks along." "That's..." Emma's mind spun. "No, that's impossible. We haven't..." She stopped. Because suddenly Emma remembered. The wedding night. She'd been so exhausted, so emotionally wrecked, that she'd barely remembered it happening. But now fragments came back. Whiskey. Too much whiskey. Dante helping her to bed. His hands. His mouth. The world blurring. She'd thought it was a dream. It wasn't. "No," Emma whispered. "No, no, no." The doctor's expression softened. "Would you like me to call your husband?" "No." Emma stood abruptly. "Don't call him. Don't tell anyone. I need to think." She fled the clinic, Luca trailing behind, and made it back to the SUV before completely breaking down. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Dante Moretti's child, the man who swore he'd never have children, the man who'd had himself sterilized, the man who'd married her for 3 years and nothing more. Emma's hands shook as she pulled out her phone and searched for information. Vasectomy reversal. Failure rates. Possibilities. The statistics came back grim. Natural conception after vasectomy was extremely rare, but not impossible, especially if... Emma's stomach dropped. The wedding night. She barely remembered it. But if Dante had been drinking too, if his control had slipped, if they'd... Oh God. She was carrying the child of a man who never wanted children. A man who'd explicitly told Vincent Calabrese he'd never subject anyone to his legacy. And now Emma was trapped in a contract with that child growing inside her. When they reached the penthouse, Emma went straight to her room and locked the door. She needed to tell Dante. But she couldn't. Not yet. Because the moment Dante found out she was pregnant, everything would change. The contract, the marriage, the careful fiction they'd built, all of it would shatter. And Emma had no idea what would be left when it did. She sat on her bed, one hand pressed against her stomach, and felt the walls of her cage closing in permanently. Vincent Calabrese had wanted to find Dante's weakness. He'd just found it, and Emma was terrified of what would happen when he discovered the truth. Emma spent 3 days locked in her bedroom, hand pressed against her stomach, like she could somehow make the pregnancy disappear through sheer willpower. It didn't work. Every morning she woke up nauseous. Every afternoon she found herself staring at baby websites she hadn't meant to open. Every night she lay awake wondering how the hell she was going to tell Dante that the impossible had happened, that his sterile body had somehow created life, that the 3-year contract they'd signed now had a 4th participant who hadn't been part of the negotiation. Luca knocked on her door the morning of the 4th day. "Mrs. Moretti, Mr. Moretti wants to see you." Emma's pulse spiked. Now? Now. She dragged herself out of bed, pulled on jeans and a sweater, and tried to look like her entire world hadn't just imploded. When she emerged, she found Dante standing in the living room, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian with an edge to his voice that made her skin prickle. He hung up when he saw her. "We need to talk," he said. Emma's stomach dropped. "About what?" "The doctor's office called. Said you left before they could discuss your test results." Dante's eyes locked onto hers. "Are you sick?" "No." "Then what?" Emma opened her mouth, closed it. The words wouldn't come. How did you tell someone they'd become a father when they'd spent years ensuring that exact thing could never happen? Dante's expression darkened. "Emma, whatever it is, tell me." "I'm pregnant." The words came out flat, clinical, like ripping off a bandage. Dante went absolutely still. For 5 seconds, he didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. Then his face went white. "That's not possible," he said quietly. "The blood test says otherwise." "No." Dante's voice hardened. "I had a vasectomy 8 years ago. I'm sterile. The child isn't mine." Emma's breath caught. "Excuse me?" "You heard me." Dante's eyes went cold, accusatory. "I don't know whose child you're carrying, but it's not mine." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She stepped back, shock and fury colliding in her chest. "You think I cheated on you?" "I think biology doesn't lie." "Neither do I." Emma's voice rose. "I haven't been with anyone else. I haven't even left this goddamn penthouse without armed guards watching my every move. When exactly would I have had the time to sleep with someone else?" Dante's jaw tightened. "Then explain it." "I can't." Emma's hands shook. "But I know it's yours." "The wedding night. We were both drinking. Fragments keep coming back. We didn't sleep together." "Are you sure?" Emma moved closer. "Because I remember your hands. Your mouth. The way you stopped yourself before it went too far because I wasn't fully conscious. But maybe it already had." Dante's expression cracked slightly. Uncertainty flickered across his face. "I was careful. Clearly not careful enough." Emma's voice broke. "I don't know how this happened, but I know I haven't been with anyone else, so either you believe me or you don't." Dante turned away, hands clenched into fists. For a long moment he didn't speak. Emma watched his shoulders rise and fall with controlled breathing, like he was physically restraining himself from something violent. Finally, he pulled out his phone and made a call. "Get me Dr. Reeves," he said coldly. "Now." 20 minutes later, a man in his 60s arrived at the penthouse carrying a medical bag. Dr. Reeves had the calm demeanor of someone who'd spent decades dealing with powerful men and their secrets. Dante didn't waste time. "I need a paternity test. Immediately." Dr. Reeves glanced between Dante and Emma. "The child hasn't been born yet. Prenatal paternity testing requires—" "I know what it requires." Dante's voice was sharp. "Blood sample from her. Buccal swab from me. You can have results in 48 hours. Make it happen." Emma wanted to scream, wanted to throw something at Dante's head, but Dr. Reeves was already pulling out supplies, and Emma knew fighting would only make this worse. She sat down and let the doctor draw her blood, while Dante watched from across the room like she was a suspect in an interrogation. When Dr. Reeves swabbed Dante's cheek, the crime lord didn't flinch, just stared at Emma with those unreadable eyes. "Results by Friday," Dr. Reeves said, packing up. "I'll call you directly." The moment he left, Emma stood. "I'm going to my room." "Emma, don't." Emma's voice cracked. "You just accused me of cheating, of lying about who fathered this child. You don't get to say my name like we're having a conversation." She walked away before Dante could respond, locked herself in her bedroom, and finally let herself break down completely. 48 hours. 2 days of waiting to prove something she already knew was true. 2 days of living with a man who thought she was a liar. Emma pressed her hands against her stomach and whispered to the life growing inside her. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you're stuck in this mess." The next 2 days were hell. Dante avoided her completely. Emma stayed in her room, only emerging for water and food she could barely keep down. Luca and his team watched her with careful neutrality, like they'd been ordered not to take sides. Emma visited her mother once during those 48 hours. Catherine was looking stronger. The treatment was working miracles. But she took one look at Emma's face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" Catherine asked. Emma told her everything. The pregnancy, Dante's accusation, the paternity test. Catherine's expression went through shock, anger, and finally something that looked like fear. "Emma, if that child is his, it is. Then you're carrying the heir to a criminal empire." Catherine's voice dropped. "Do you understand what that means? You'll never be free. Neither will that baby." "I know." "Then you need to leave." Catherine grabbed Emma's hand. "Now. Before the test results come back. Before Dante realizes what he has. Take the money you've saved and disappear." "I can't." Emma's throat tightened. "Your treatment is working. I'll be fine." "Mom?" "Emma, Listen to me. Catherine's grip tightened. I would rather die than watch you spend the rest of your life trapped with a man who doesn't trust you, who thinks so little of you that he'd accuse you of betraying him. You deserve better. There is no better. Emma pulled away. I signed a contract. If I run, Dante will find me, and then… She couldn't finish the sentence because she didn't know what Dante would do, and that terrified her more than anything. Friday arrived like an execution date. Emma woke early, dressed in silence, and waited in her bedroom for the phone call that would decide everything. At 10 a.m., she heard Dante's phone ring in the living room. She pressed her ear against the door, heart hammering. Dante's voice was too quiet to make out words, but Emma heard the moment everything changed, heard the sharp intake of breath, the long silence, the single word spoken in disbelief. Impossible. Emma's legs nearly gave out. She waited another 5 minutes before Dante knocked on her door. Emma, we need to talk. She opened the door slowly. Dante stood in the hallway looking like he'd been hit by a truck. His face was pale. His eyes were red-rimmed. He held his phone like it was evidence in a crime scene. It's yours, Emma said quietly. I know. Dante's voice was hollow. Dr. Reeves confirmed it. 99.9% probability. The child is mine. Emma waited for an apology, an explanation, something. Instead, Dante just stared at her like she was a ghost. I don't understand, he said finally. The vasectomy, I was tested afterward. It was successful. Apparently not. Emma's voice was flat. Congratulations, you're going to be a father. Dante's expression twisted. Not happiness, not joy, something closer to horror. I can't… He stepped back. I never wanted… I know. Emma felt something inside her harden. You made that very clear, but it's happening anyway. So what now? Dante didn't answer. He just turned and walked away, disappearing into his side of the penthouse. Emma stood alone in the hallway, one hand pressed against her stomach, and felt the last shred of hope die. Dante Moretti hadn't wanted children, and now he was trapped with one, just like Emma was trapped with him. That afternoon, Emma heard raised voices from Dante's office. She pressed her ear against the wall and caught fragments. Can't keep this quiet. Vincent will find out. Biggest vulnerability you've ever had. Luca's voice, practical, concerned. Then Dante's response, sharp and cold. I'm aware. More murmuring. Emma couldn't make out the rest, but the message was clear. The pregnancy wasn't just a personal crisis. It was a tactical nightmare. If Vincent Calabrese discovered Emma was carrying Dante's child, his heir, the war would escalate into something neither of them could control. Emma moved away from the wall and collapsed onto her bed. She was carrying a target, a weapon Vincent could use to destroy Dante completely, and there was no way to hide it. In a few months, her body would betray the secret. The press would notice. Chicago would know, and Vincent would strike. Emma closed her eyes and tried to figure out how she'd become the center of a war she never asked to fight. That evening, Dante finally emerged from his office. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Maybe he hadn't. We need to adjust security, he said without preamble. Double the detail, rotate guards, install additional surveillance. Vincent can't find out about the pregnancy until we're ready. Ready for what? Emma asked. I don't know yet. Dante's jaw tightened. But we need time to prepare. Time for what? Emma, no. Emma stood. You don't get to shut me out. This is my life, my body, my child. If Vincent Calabrese is going to come after me, I deserve to know the plan. Dante's expression darkened. The plan is to keep you alive. That's not good enough. It's all I have. Dante's voice rose. You think I planned this? You think I wanted any of this? I spent 8 years making sure I could never bring a child into my world. And now… He stopped, turned away. Emma's throat burned. Say it. What? Say what you're thinking, that you wish I wasn't pregnant, that you wish the test had come back negative, that you wish… I wish I deserved this, Dante interrupted quietly. Emma froze. Dante turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw something other than control in his eyes. She saw fear. I don't know how to be a father, he said. I don't know how to protect a child in a world full of people like Vincent, like me. I don't know how to. His voice cracked. I don't know how to love something that fragile without destroying it. Emma's breath caught. This wasn't the cold crime lord. This wasn't the man who'd bought her with a contract. This was someone terrified of his own capacity to hurt. Then maybe you start by trusting me, Emma said quietly, by believing I didn't betray you, by treating me like a partner instead of an asset. Dante stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. I'm sorry for accusing you, for not believing. Don't. Emma held up her hand. We don't have time for apologies. Vincent's going to find out eventually. What happens then? Dante's expression hardened back into stone. Then I eliminate him before he can use you against me. You mean kill him? Yes. Emma should have been horrified, should have been disgusted, but instead she just felt numb. This was her life now, married to a man who solved problems with violence, carrying a child who would inherit that same legacy. When? She asked. Soon. Dante pulled out his phone. But first, I need to move you somewhere safer. The penthouse is compromised. Too many eyes, too many ways in. Where? I have a house outside the city, private, secure. You'll stay there until after the baby's born. Emma's stomach dropped. For how long? However long it takes. That could be months. I know. Dante. It's not negotiable. His voice went cold again. Your safety is the priority. Everything else is secondary. Emma wanted to argue, wanted to scream that she wasn't a prisoner, that he couldn't just lock her away like some treasure in a vault. But the look in Dante's eyes stopped her. He was terrified, not for himself, for her. And Emma realized with sinking clarity that Dante Moretti would burn down the entire city if it meant keeping her and their child alive. When do we leave? She asked quietly. Tonight. The house was 90 minutes outside Chicago, hidden behind gates and trees and enough security to guard a small country. It was beautiful, stone and glass and modern architecture, but it felt like a cage wrapped in expensive trappings. Emma walked through empty rooms while Luca and his team installed additional surveillance, cameras, motion sensors, armed guards patrolling the perimeter. Dante stood near the window, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating something Emma couldn't hear. When he finally hung up, he turned to face her. I have to go back to the city, he said. Handle some business. I'll be back in a few days. You're leaving me here alone? You'll have Luca and Marco and 6 other guards. Dante's expression softened slightly. You'll be safe. Safe from what? Emma's voice rose. From Vincent? Or from you? Dante flinched. Emma, you keep saying you're protecting me, but all I feel is trapped. Emma's hand shook. First the penthouse, now this. What's next? Do you lock me in a room? Chain me to a bed? How far does your protection go before it becomes imprisonment? As far as it needs to. Dante's voice was flat. I won't apologize for keeping you alive. Even if it kills me inside? Dante stared at her. For a moment, Emma thought she saw something crack in his expression, something human. Then he walked to the door. I'll be back Friday, he said without looking at her. Don't leave the property. He left. Emma stood alone in the house, surrounded by armed guards and security cameras, and felt the walls close in permanently. She was pregnant, isolated, trapped in a war she never chose. And the man who'd promised to keep her safe was treating her like cargo that needed storing. Emma sank onto the couch and pressed her hands against her stomach. I'm sorry, she whispered to the life growing inside her. I'm so sorry. 5 days passed. Emma wandered the house like a ghost, watched by guards who never spoke to her. She called her mother twice. Catherine was doing well. The treatment was working miracles, but Emma couldn't bring herself to tell her about the safe house, about being locked away like some princess in a tower. Dante called once each day. Brief conversations, checking in, making sure she was eating, sleeping, surviving. But he didn't come back. On the 6th day, Emma woke to the sound of shouting outside. She ran to the window and saw Luca on the phone, his expression grim. Marco was yelling orders at the other guards. Something was wrong. Emma pulled on clothes and ran downstairs. Luca intercepted her at the bottom. Mrs. Moretti, you need to go back to your room. What's happening? Security breach. Someone tried to access the property. Emma's blood ran cold. Vincent? We don't know yet. Luca's hand moved to his weapon. But Mr. Moretti is on his way. Until then, you stay inside. Emma wanted to argue, but the look in Luca's eyes stopped her. This wasn't a drill. Someone had found her. She went back upstairs and locked herself in the bedroom, heart hammering. Through the window, she could see guards moving through the property, weapons drawn. 30 minutes later, tires screeched on gravel. Emma looked out and saw Dante's SUV pulling up to the house. He jumped out before the vehicle fully stopped, rage radiating off him like heat. Luca met him at the door. Emma crept to the top of the stairs to listen. How did they find her? Dante's voice was deadly quiet. We don't know yet. Luca sounded shaken. They didn't breach the perimeter, just did surveillance. Long-range cameras. They were watching. For how long? At least 3 days. Dante's fist slammed into the wall. The sound echoed through the house like a gunshot. I want every inch of this property swept, he said coldly. Find out how they tracked us. Find out who gave up the location, and find them before I do, because if I get to them first, there won't be anything left to question. Yes, sir. Dante climbed the stairs. Emma barely had time to step back before he appeared, his expression darker than she'd ever seen. Pack your things, he said. We're leaving. Where? Somewhere they can't find you. Dante. Now, Emma. His voice cracked like a whip. We don't have time. Emma packed in 10 minutes. When she came downstairs, Dante was on the phone speaking rapid Italian, his free hand clenched into a fist. He hung up when he saw her. Let's go. They drove in silence, 3 SUVs moving in formation through back roads Emma didn't recognize. Dante sat beside her, jaw tight, eyes scanning the landscape like he expected an ambush around every corner. Where are we going? Emma asked finally. Airport? Airport? Private jet? We're leaving the country. Dante's voice was flat. Vincent knows you're pregnant. Someone leaked it. Every news outlet in Chicago will have the story by morning, which means we're out of time. Emma's stomach dropped. How do you know Vincent knows? Dante pulled out his phone and showed her a message. Congratulations on the heir. Shame if something happened to it. The words were ice down Emma's spine. When did you get this? She whispered. 2 hours ago. And you didn't tell me? I was busy making sure you stayed alive long enough for it to matter. Dante's expression was stone. Vincent just declared war. The surveillance at the house was a warning. Next time, it won't be cameras. It'll be bullets. Emma's hands shook. So we run. We regroup. Dante's eyes met hers. I'm taking you somewhere Vincent can't reach. Somewhere I can protect you until the baby's born. And then what? Then I end this. Dante's voice went deadly quiet. Permanently. The private jet was waiting on a small airstrip outside the city. Emma had never been on a plane before, let alone a private one. The interior was all leather and wood and luxury that felt obscene given the circumstances. Dante strapped her into a seat, then moved to the back of the plane to make phone calls. Emma sat alone, one hand pressed against her stomach, and tried to process what was happening. She was fleeing the country, pregnant with the child of a mafia kingpin, being hunted by his enemies. This was her life now, and there was no way out. The plane took off into darkness. Through the window, Emma watched Chicago disappear beneath clouds. Somewhere down there, Vincent Calabrese was planning his next move. Somewhere down there, Emma's mother was getting treatment paid for by the man who just kidnapped his own wife to keep her safe. Somewhere down there, Emma's old life, the convenience store, the tiny apartment, the normal struggles, felt like a dream from someone else's existence. Dante appeared beside her, holding a glass of water. You should drink something. Emma took the glass without looking at him. Where are we going? Italy. I have a villa in Tuscany. Remote. Secure. No one knows about it except Luca and a few trusted people. How long? Until it's safe. When will it be safe? Dante didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. It would never be safe. Not as long as Vincent Calabrese breathed. Not as long as Emma carried Dante's heir. I'm sorry, Dante said quietly. Emma finally looked at him. His face was drawn, exhausted, haunted. For what? She asked. For all of it. For tracking you down. For making that deal. For getting you pregnant. For dragging you into a war you never asked to fight. Dante's voice cracked. You deserve better than this. So did you. Dante's eyes met hers, and Emma saw something break behind them. No, I didn't. But the child does. And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure they survive. Even if it means I don't? Don't say that. Dante's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Not hard, just desperate. Don't even think that. Why? Emma's voice rose. You've made it very clear I'm an asset, a possession, something that needs protecting. But what happens when protecting me means sacrificing me? When Vincent forces you to choose between me and the baby? That won't happen. How do you know? Because I won't let it. Dante's grip tightened. I will burn down the entire world before I let Vincent touch either of you. Do you understand? I will raze Chicago to the ground. I will kill everyone he loves. I will make him wish he'd never heard your name. That's my promise. Emma stared at him. At the man who'd bought her with a contract, who'd accused her of betrayal, who was now swearing to destroy the world to keep her safe. And she realized something terrifying. Dante Moretti had fallen in love with her. Maybe not the way romance novels described, maybe not gently or beautifully, but completely, obsessively, violently. He loved her the way a man like him could love, with possession and destruction and devotion that looked like madness. And Emma didn't know if that made her safer or more doomed. Okay, she whispered. Dante released her wrist, sat back, closed his eyes like the conversation had physically exhausted him. Emma turned back to the window and watched darkness rush past. Somewhere over the Atlantic Ocean, she fell asleep. When she woke, Dante's jacket was draped over her shoulders, and his hand was pressed against her stomach, like he was trying to memorize the shape of the life growing inside. Emma closed her eyes and pretended not to notice. Italy was beautiful in the way dangerous things often are. The villa sat on a hilltop surrounded by vineyards and olive groves, with views of rolling Tuscan countryside that looked like paintings. The house itself was ancient stone and modern renovations, with enough rooms to get lost in and enough security to rival a military compound. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Cameras watched every entrance. Luca coordinated everything with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. Emma was given a bedroom on the second floor with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the valley. It was beautiful, peaceful. It was still a cage. Dante disappeared for hours at a time, locked in his office, making phone calls in Italian, planning something Emma couldn't see. She spent her days walking the property under Luca's supervision, trying to process the fact that she was pregnant and trapped in a foreign country and being hunted by a man who wanted to destroy everything Dante loved. One afternoon, 2 weeks after arriving, Emma found herself in the villa's library. It was a massive room filled with books in multiple languages, comfortable chairs, and the smell of old paper. She was reaching for a book when she noticed something odd, a photograph tucked between pages. Old, faded. Emma pulled it out. The photograph showed a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, standing in front of the villa. She was beautiful, dark hair, bright smile, pregnant. Emma's heart stopped. She turned the photo over. On the back, written in elegant script, Maria, 6 months, 1998. Emma's hands shook. Maria, a pregnant woman at this villa 28 years ago. She flipped through more books, found more photographs. The same woman in various stages of pregnancy, then holding a baby, then nothing. Emma's pulse hammered. She grabbed the photographs and went looking for Dante. She found him in his office, bent over paperwork, looking exhausted. "Who's Maria?" Emma demanded. Dante looked up, saw the photographs in her hand. His face went white. "Where did you find those?" "The library." Emma held them up. "Who is she?" Dante stood slowly. "She was my sister." Emma's breath caught. "Was?" "She died." Dante's voice was flat. 28 years ago. In this villa. 6 months pregnant. Emma's stomach dropped. "How?" "Vincent Calabrese's father." Dante's hands clenched into fists. "He found out she was pregnant with my nephew, wanted to use the child as leverage against my family. Maria refused to cooperate, so Dante stopped, turned away. Emma's vision blurred. Oh my God, that's why I never wanted children. Dante's voice cracked. Because I watched what happened to Maria. Watched her die because she carried something precious. Watched my family destroy itself trying to get revenge. I swore I'd never put anyone through that. Never create another target. Dante's, and now I've done exactly that. Dante turned to face her, and Emma saw tears streaming down his face. I've made you into Maria. I've put our child in the same danger that killed her, and I don't know how to fix it. Emma crossed the room and took his face in her hands. Then stop trying to fix it alone. Let me help. You can't.
Yes, I can. Emma's voice firmed. I'm not some fragile thing that needs hiding. I'm not Maria. I'm carrying your child. But I'm also the woman who survived 18 months caring for a dying mother while working graveyard shifts. I'm stronger than you think. I know. Dante's hands came up to cover hers. That's what terrifies me. Because Vincent will see that strength, and he'll try to break it. Then we break him first. Dante stared at her. What? You heard me. Emma's expression hardened. We stop running. We stop hiding. We draw Vincent out and end this. Before the baby's born, before it's too late. Emma, that's the only option. Emma pulled away. Because I won't spend the rest of my life locked in villas and penthouses, wondering when Vincent's going to strike. I won't raise our child in that fear. So either we end him, or he ends us. Those are the choices. Dante's expression shifted. Something dark and dangerous flickered across his face. You're serious. Completely. Then you need to understand what that means. Dante moved closer, his voice dropping. If we go after Vincent, it'll be war. Real war. People will die. Some of them might be people you care about. And when it's over, there's no going back. You'll be complicit in everything I do. I'm already complicit, Emma said quietly. The moment I married you, I became part of your world. I might as well fight for it. Dante studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Okay, then we do this together. Together, Emma agreed. And somewhere in that agreement, Emma felt the last piece of her old self die. She wasn't Emma Vale anymore. She was Emma Moretti, wife of a crime lord, mother of his heir, and willing to do whatever it took to protect them both, even if it meant becoming someone she no longer recognized. The war began 3 days later, not with gunfire or explosions, but with a single phone call that changed everything. Dante's phone rang at 4 a.m. Emma woke to the sound of him answering in the next room, his voice sharp and cold. She dragged herself out of bed. 14 weeks pregnant now, her body starting to show the changes, and found him standing at the window, phone pressed to his ear, his entire body rigid. When? He asked. A pause. How many? Another pause. Then his fist slammed into the wall hard enough to crack plaster. Find them. All of them. I don't care how long it takes. He hung up and stood there breathing hard, shoulders heaving. Emma stayed in the doorway. What happened? Vincent hit one of my warehouses in Chicago. Dante's voice was barely controlled rage. Burned it to the ground. Killed 4 of my men. Left a message spray-painted on the wall. The heir dies next. Emma's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. He's coming for us. He's baiting me. Dante turned to face her, and his eyes were pure darkness. He wants me to come back to Chicago, wants me out in the open where he can strike. So we give him what he wants. Emma, you said we do this together. Emma moved closer. That means we don't hide. We go back. We draw him out. We end this. Dante stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You're pregnant. I'm aware. Vincent will kill you the moment he gets a chance. Then don't give him a chance. Emma's voice hardened. You have resources, security, people who are loyal to you. Use them. Set a trap. Make Vincent think he's winning, then destroy him. Dante's jaw worked. Emma could see him processing, calculating, weighing options. Finally, he nodded slowly. Okay, but we do this my way. Complete control. You follow every order exactly as I give it. No improvising. No risks. Understood? Understood. I mean it, Emma. Dante grabbed her shoulders, his grip firm. One mistake and you're dead. The baby's dead. I'm not losing you because you decided to play hero. I'm not playing anything. Emma met his eyes without flinching. I'm fighting for my life, for our child's life. That's not heroism. That's survival. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Pride, maybe? Or fear? Possibly both. Then we leave tonight, he said. And when we get back to Chicago, we go to war. The flight back felt different than the escape 2 weeks ago. This time, Emma wasn't running. She was walking into the fire deliberately, eyes open, knowing exactly what waited on the other end. Dante spent the entire flight on the phone, speaking rapid Italian with people Emma assumed were his inner circle, coordinating, planning, building the trap that would either save them or destroy them. Luca sat across from Emma, cleaning his weapon with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done it 10,000 times. "You ready for this?" he asked without looking up. "Does it matter?" "Not really." Luca's mouth twitched into something that might have been a smile. "But I figured I'd ask anyway. How long have you worked for Dante?" Emma found herself curious suddenly. 12 years since I got out of the military." Luca snapped his gun back together. "He saved my life once. I've been paying that debt ever since." "What happened?" Luca finally looked at her. "I was in a bad place. Did some things I'm not proud of. Dante found me before the wrong people did. Gave me a choice. Work for him or die. I chose to work. Do you regret it?" "Every day?" Luca's expression was unreadable. "But I'm still alive. That counts for something." Emma wondered if she'd be saying the same thing in 12 years, if she'd survived that long. They landed at a private airstrip outside Chicago just before midnight. 3 SUVs waited, engines running, armed men standing guard. Dante didn't waste time with pleasantries. "We're going to the penthouse," he said, strapping Emma into the back seat beside him. "It's the most visible location. Vincent will know within hours that we're back. That's what we want. And then we wait for him to make his move." Dante's hand rested on her knee. "When he does, we'll be ready." The drive back into the city felt surreal. Chicago glittered beyond the windows like nothing had changed. Like Emma hadn't just spent 2 weeks hiding in Italy. Like her entire world hadn't imploded. The penthouse was exactly as they'd left it. Sterile, beautiful, empty. But now there were additional security measures Emma hadn't noticed before. Reinforced doors, bulletproof windows, cameras in every corner. Luca had transformed the place into a fortress. "You'll stay in the master bedroom," Dante said, guiding Emma through the penthouse. "It's the most secure room. Panic button by the bed. Reinforced walls. If anything happens, you lock yourself inside and wait for me." "Where will you be?" "Wherever I need to be." Dante's expression was grim. "This is going to move fast, Emma. Vincent won't wait. He'll strike within 48 hours, maybe less." "How do you know?" "Because that's what I would do." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to demand more details, but exhaustion was hitting her hard, the pregnancy making everything 10 times worse. Dante noticed. "Get some sleep. We'll talk strategy in the morning." "Dante?" "Oh, sleep, Emma." His voice softened slightly. "You're going to need your strength." Emma went to the bedroom, now theirs apparently, since Dante had said master bedroom, and collapsed onto the bed still fully clothed. She was asleep before her head hit the pillow. She woke 6 hours later to sunlight streaming through windows and the sound of voices in the living room. Emma dragged herself out of bed, changed clothes, and found Dante surrounded by 5 men she'd never seen before. They all stopped talking when she appeared. Dante gestured her over. "Emma, this is my inner circle, Marco, you know. This is Sal, Tony, Giuseppe, and Rocco. They're the ones who'll be coordinating security and operations." The men nodded at her with varying degrees of respect and curiosity. Emma felt like an animal at the zoo. "Gentlemen," Dante continued, "this is my wife. She's under absolute protection. Anyone who lets anything happen to her answers to me personally. Clear?" "Clear, boss," they said in unison. Emma sat down on the couch while the men continued their meeting. They spread maps across the coffee table. The city divided into territories, marked with red and blue pins. Emma realized she was looking at a battlefield. "Vincent controls everything south of Roosevelt," Dante said, pointing. "He's got the docks, the distribution networks, and half the construction contracts.
But he's been pushing north for months, testing boundaries. The warehouse he burned was right on the edge of my territory. That wasn't random. That was a statement. So we hit him back, Sal suggested. He was older, maybe 50, with gray hair and cold eyes. Take out one of his operations. Show him we're not backing down. No. Dante's voice was firm. That's what he expects. He wants us to retaliate so he can use it as justification to escalate. We need him to come to us. How? Giuseppe asked. Dante glanced at Emma. We make him think she's vulnerable. Leak information that she's back in Chicago. Make it look like security is lighter than it actually is. Vincent won't be able to resist. Emma's stomach dropped. You're using me as bait. I'm using you as this trap. Dante's eyes locked onto hers. You'll be safe. I promise. But Vincent needs to think he has a chance. The moment he commits his resources to coming after you, we close the net. And if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. You can't guarantee that. Watch me. Dante's expression was absolute certainty. I've spent 12 years building this empire. I know every player in this city, every resource, every angle. Vincent is good, but I'm better, and I'm not losing you. Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that Dante had thought of every contingency. But the memory of Vincent's voice on the phone, smooth, threatening, confident, kept echoing in her head. When do we start? She asked quietly. Now! Dante pulled out his phone and made a call. Leak it. All of it. The pregnancy. The location. Make sure it hits social media within the hour. He hung up. Emma's pulse hammered. That's it? We just wait? We wait, Dante confirmed. And we prepare. The next 36 hours were the longest of Emma's life. She stayed in the penthouse under constant guard while Dante disappeared for hours at a time, coordinating operations Emma wasn't privy to. Luca and his team ran drills, evacuation procedures, lockdown protocols, threat responses. Emma watched them work with the efficiency of soldiers preparing for combat, because that's what this was. Combat. On the second day, Emma was sitting in the living room trying to read when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart jumped. She answered. Hello? Mrs. Moretti. Vincent's voice was silk over razors. I heard you're back in town. Congratulations on the pregnancy, by the way. How far along are you now? 14 weeks? 15? Emma's blood ran cold. She looked up and saw Luca already moving, signaling to someone. They were tracing the call. What do you want, Vincent? Just to talk, to offer some friendly advice. Vincent's tone sharpened. Your husband is playing a dangerous game, using you as bait, thinking he can outsmart me. But see, I've been playing this game a lot longer than Dante has, and I know all his moves. Then why are you calling me? Because I like you, Emma, I really do. You're strong, smart. You don't belong in Dante's world. Vincent paused. So I'm going to give you a chance. Walk away. Take your mother. Disappear. I'll even give you money to start over. All you have to do is leave. And the baby? Unfortunate collateral damage. Vincent's voice went cold. Dante's heir can't be allowed to exist. You understand that, don't you? As long as that child lives, there will never be peace. So either you lose the baby now, or you lose everything later. Your choice. Emma's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. Go to hell. I was afraid you'd say that. Vincent sighed. Then I'll see you soon, Mrs. Moretti, and I promise it'll be quick. The line went dead. Emma's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. Luca was already on his radio, barking orders. Within seconds, Dante burst through the penthouse door. What did he say? Dante demanded. Emma told him everything. Dante's expression grew darker with every word. He's moving tonight, Dante said finally. He wouldn't call unless he was ready to strike. How do you know? Because that's the move I'd make. Dante pulled Emma to her feet. We need to get you to the safe room. Now. What safe room? The one I built in the master bedroom. Dante was already moving, pulling Emma with him. Reinforced steel, separate ventilation, enough supplies for 48 hours. If Vincent breaches the penthouse, that's where you go. They reached the bedroom. Dante pressed his palm against a section of wall that Emma had assumed was solid. It slid open, revealing a small room, maybe 8 by 10, with a cot, bottled water, and a gun mounted on the wall.
Emma stared. When did you build this? The day I brought you home. Dante guided her inside. I told you, I'm not losing you. Dante, listen to me. He gripped her shoulders. If anything happens tonight, if you hear gunfire, if the alarms go off, if anyone comes through that door who isn't me or Luca, you lock yourself in here. You don't come out for anyone. Understood? What about you? I'll be fine. But Dante's eyes told a different story. Promise me, Emma. Promise you'll stay safe. Emma's throat tightened. I promise. Dante kissed her then, hard, desperate, like he was trying to memorize the feeling. When he pulled away, his eyes were wet. I love you, he said quietly. Emma's breath caught. It was the first time he'd said it out loud. I know, she whispered back. Dante's expression cracked. Then he stepped out of the safe room, closed the door, and was gone. Emma stood alone in the small space, heart hammering, and tried to figure out when exactly she'd fallen in love with the man who'd bought her with a contract. She couldn't pinpoint the moment. Maybe it had been gradual. Maybe it had been instant. Maybe it didn't matter. All that mattered was surviving the night. The attack came at 2 a.m. Emma was lying on the cot in the master bedroom. Dante had insisted she sleep there, not in the safe room, until absolutely necessary, when the first explosion rocked the building. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, red and harsh. Alarms screamed. Emma rolled out of bed, her pregnant body clumsy, heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She could hear shouting, gunfire, glass shattering. The door burst open. Luca stood there, weapon drawn, blood streaming down his face from a cut above his eye. Safe room, now. Emma didn't argue. She ran to the wall, pressed her palm where Dante had shown her. The door slid open. She dove inside. Luca followed, slamming the door shut behind them. The sound of the locks engaging was like thunder. What's happening? Emma gasped. Vincent's men breached the building, 8 of them, maybe more. Luca was checking his weapon, his movements mechanical despite the blood covering half his face. Mr. Moretti is engaging them now. Is he? He's fine. Luca's eyes met hers. He's got Marco and Sal with him. They're holding the line. Another explosion, closer this time. The safe room shook. Emma's hands moved to her stomach instinctively, protecting the life inside her. Through the walls, muffled by steel and concrete, she could hear the war raging, gunfire, shouting, the sound of bodies hitting the floor. Her husband was out there fighting for his life, for her life, for their child's life. And Emma was locked in a box, helpless, doing nothing. I can't just sit here, she said. You don't have a choice. Luca's voice was firm. Mr. Moretti's orders were clear. You stay here no matter what. What if he's hurt? What if he needs help? Then I go help him. You stay. Luca moved to the door, listening. Someone's trying to breach the bedroom. Emma's pulse spiked. Can they get through? Not easily, but if they bring explosives... Luca cut himself off. Stay behind me. He raised his weapon, aiming at the door. Emma pressed herself against the back wall, one hand on her stomach, the other covering her mouth to keep from screaming. Seconds stretched into hours. Then the door exploded inward. Luca fired immediately. Emma heard someone scream. Another gunshot. Then Luca was moving, stepping out of the safe room, engaging whoever had breached the bedroom. Emma was alone. She waited, counting her heartbeats, praying. 10 seconds. 20. 30. Then Luca's voice. Clear! Emma exhaled shakily. She started to move toward the door. Someone grabbed her from behind. A hand clamped over her mouth. An arm wrapped around her waist. Emma's scream was muffled as she was dragged backward, out of the safe room, into the chaos of the bedroom. She thrashed, trying to break free, but whoever held her was strong. Too strong. Stop fighting, or I'll kill you right here, a voice hissed in her ear. Emma went still. The man spun her around. He was young, maybe 30, with dead eyes and a gun pressed against her temple. Where's Dante? He demanded. Emma's mind raced. I don't know. Liar! He jammed the gun harder against her head. Call him, now! I don't have my phone. Then we'll do this the fun way. The man started dragging her toward the door.
You're coming with me. Vincent wants to meet you personally. Emma's blood turned to ice. If Vincent got his hands on her, she didn't finish the thought. Instead, she went limp, dead weight in the man's arms. He stumbled, his grip loosening for just a second. Emma drove her elbow into his stomach. He grunted, loosening further. Emma twisted, grabbed his wrist, and bit down hard enough to taste blood. The man screamed. His grip broke. Emma ran. She made it 3 steps before he recovered, grabbing her hair, yanking her backward. Emma's head snapped back. Pain exploded through her skull. She fell. The man stood over her, raising his gun. A single shot echoed through the room. The man's head snapped back. Blood sprayed. He collapsed. Emma looked up.
Dante stood in the doorway, gun raised, his suit covered in blood that might or might not have been his. His eyes were wild, feral. "Emma!" He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees beside her. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay." Emma's voice shook. "The baby—" "Let me see." Dante's hands moved over her stomach gently, checking for injuries. "Does anything hurt?" "No, I don't think so." Emma grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." But his hands were shaking. Vincent's men are dead, all of them. But he wasn't with them. This was just the opening move. Then where is he? "I don't know." Dante pulled Emma to her feet. "But we need to get you out of Chicago, tonight, right now." "No." Emma's voice firmed. "We're not running again." "Emma, he's not going to stop, Dante. You know that. We leave tonight. He'll just find us again, attack again. We have to end this. Now." "How?" Emma's mind raced. But then she remembered something Vincent had said during the phone call. Something about Dante's moves. "He knows you," she said slowly. "He knows how you think, how you operate. That's his advantage." "What's your point?" "My point is he doesn't know me." Emma met Dante's eyes. "Let me draw him out, meet him, get close enough to—" "Absolutely not." Dante's expression was pure horror. "You're pregnant. You're not going anywhere near Vincent." "Then we're out of options." "I'll find another way." "There is no other way." Emma's voice rose. "He wants me. Use that. Set up a meeting. Make him think I'm vulnerable. When he gets close, you take him out. And if something goes wrong, then you make sure it doesn't." Emma grabbed Dante's hands. "You said you wouldn't lose me. Prove it. Trust me to do this."
Dante stared at her for a long moment. Emma could see the war raging behind his eyes, the need to protect her fighting against the cold calculation that knew she was right. Finally, he closed his eyes. "Okay, but we do it smart. Controlled environment, every angle covered. The moment Vincent shows his hand, I end him." "Agreed." Dante pulled out his phone and made a call. When someone answered, he spoke in Italian, sharp, commanding. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "The meet is set. Tomorrow night. Neutral location." Vincent agreed. "That easy?" "He wants this to end as much as we do, just for different reasons." Dante's jaw tightened. "He wants you dead, and me broken. I want him in the ground." "Then let's make sure you get what you want." They spent the next 24 hours preparing. Dante's people scouted the location. An abandoned warehouse on the waterfront that belonged to neither Dante nor Vincent. Neutral ground. Luca positioned snipers on 3 surrounding buildings. Marco coordinated backup teams. Sal arranged escape routes in case everything went to hell. Emma watched them work and tried not to think about all the ways this could end in disaster. The night of the meeting, Dante helped Emma into a bulletproof vest hidden beneath her jacket. His hands were steady, but his eyes betrayed him. He was terrified. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly. "Yes, I do." "Emma, to stop." Emma took his face in her hands. "I'm not the girl you found in that alley anymore. I'm not desperate and helpless. I'm your wife, the mother of your child, and I'm strong enough to do this." "I know you are." Dante's voice cracked. "That's what scares me." Emma kissed him, slow, deliberate, trying to memorize the feeling in case it was the last time. When she pulled away, Dante's eyes were wet. "If anything happens to you," he whispered, "I'll burn the world." "I know," Emma said. "That's why nothing will." They drove to the warehouse in silence. 3 SUVs, armed men, enough firepower to fight a small war.
The warehouse loomed against the night sky. Skeletal, abandoned, perfect for an ambush. Dante's hand squeezed Emma's knee. You remember the plan? Walk in, get him talking, signal when I want you to move. And if something feels wrong, I run. Good. Dante kissed her forehead. I love you. Don't forget that. I won't.
Emma stepped out of the SUV. Luca and Marco flanked her, but they stayed 10 feet back. Vincent had insisted Emma come alone. This was the compromise. The warehouse door creaked open. Emma walked inside. The space was vast. Concrete floors, rusted metal beams, broken windows letting in moonlight. And standing in the center, surrounded by his own armed men, was Vincent Calabrese. He smiled when he saw her. Mrs. Moretti, so glad you could make it. Emma stopped 20 feet away. Her heart hammered, but she kept her face calm. Let's get this over with. Straight to business, I like that. Vincent gestured to his men. They lowered their weapons slightly. I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. Walk away, tonight. Take your mother and disappear. I'll give you $5 million and a guarantee of safety. All you have to do is leave Dante. And the baby? Stays with him. Vincent's smile didn't waver. I have no interest in harming an infant, but the child can't be raised as Dante's heir. It'll be given to a family far from Chicago, far from this life. Emma's hands clenched. You want me to abandon my child. I want you to survive. Vincent took a step closer. Because if you stay, Emma, you'll die. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not next week. But eventually someone will get to you. Someone will use you against Dante. And when that happens, he'll watch you suffer before you die. Is that really what you want? What I want, Emma said slowly, is for you to go to hell. Vincent's smile vanished. That's your final answer? Yes? Then you've chosen your fate. Vincent raised his hand. Emma dove sideways as gunfire erupted. She hit the concrete hard, pain exploding through her shoulder. Around her, Dante's men poured into the warehouse, returning fire. Glass shattered. Bullets ricocheted off metal beams. Emma crawled behind a concrete pillar, gasping, trying to protect her stomach. Through the chaos, she saw Dante fighting his way toward her, gun blazing, his face a mask of fury. He was 10 feet away when Vincent appeared from nowhere, gun raised, aiming straight at Dante's head. Emma screamed. The sound was swallowed by gunfire, but it was enough. Dante turned, saw Vincent, and fired in the same instant Vincent did. Both shots hit their marks. Dante went down. Vincent staggered backward, blood blooming across his chest. Emma's world stopped. She watched Dante collapse, his gun clattering away, blood spreading beneath him. Watched Vincent fall to his knees, laughing even as he died. Worth it, Vincent gasped. So worth it. Then he toppled forward and didn't move again. Emma ran. She skidded to her knees beside Dante, her hands immediately pressing against the wound in his side. Blood poured between her fingers, hot, thick, too much. No, 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 Emma chanted. Don't you dare! Don't you fucking dare! Dante's eyes fluttered open. Emma, I'm here. I'm right here. Emma's voice broke. You're going to be fine. Luca, get a medic. The baby. Dante's hand moved weakly toward her stomach. The baby's fine. We're fine. But you need to stay with me. I'm sorry. Dante's voice was fading. For everything. For buying you. For dragging you into this. For... Stop talking. Emma's tears mixed with the blood on her hands. Save your strength. We're getting you to a hospital. Who... Emma! Dante's grip on her hand tightened. I love you. Tell our daughter. Tell her I tried. His eyes closed. No! Emma screamed. Dante! Luca appeared, dragging a medic. They pushed Emma aside, working frantically. Emma watched them cut away Dante's shirt, watched them try to stop the bleeding, watched the life drain from the man she'd somehow fallen in love with. She pressed her hands against her stomach and felt their child moving inside her. And Emma Moretti realized that she'd just lost everything. Again. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and death. Emma sat in a plastic chair outside the operating room, her clothes still soaked with Dante's blood, her hands shaking so badly she couldn't hold the cup of water a nurse had given her. Luca stood against the wall, his face gray, watching the doors like he could will Dante back to life through sheer force of presence. 3 hours. That's how long Dante had been in surgery. 3 hours of Emma sitting in silence, replaying the moment over and over. The gunshot. Dante falling. The way his eyes had closed like he was just going to sleep. The way she'd screamed his name until her voice broke. The doors finally opened. A surgeon stepped out, still wearing blood-stained scrubs. Emma shot to her feet, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. "Mrs. Moretti," the surgeon said. His voice was carefully neutral. "Your husband is alive." Emma's legs nearly gave out. Luca caught her elbow, steadying her. "The bullet missed his heart by 2 centimeters, the surgeon continued. Punctured his lung, cracked 2 ribs, caused significant internal bleeding. We've stabilized him, but the next 48 hours are critical. If he develops complications—" "Can I see him?" Emma interrupted. "He's in recovery, still unconscious, but yes, you can sit with him." Emma didn't wait for more explanation. She pushed past the surgeon, following a nurse down a sterile hallway to a room where Dante lay, connected to machines that beeped and hissed like mechanical breathing. He looked dead. His skin was gray, his chest barely moved beneath the bandages. Tubes ran from his arms to bags of fluids Emma couldn't identify. But the monitors showed a heartbeat, steady, strong, alive. Emma collapsed into the chair beside his bed and took his hand. His skin was cold. She pressed her lips against his knuckles and finally let herself cry. Not the hysterical sobbing from the warehouse. This was deeper, quieter, the kind of crying that came from somewhere so far down it felt like drowning. "You can't die," she whispered against his hand. "You don't get to propose with a contract, get me pregnant, make me fall in love with you, and then die. That's not how this works." Dante didn't answer. The machines kept beeping. Emma pressed her free hand against her stomach, feeling the small curve where their child grew. 14 weeks, a life that hadn't asked to be created in the middle of a war. "Your daughter needs you," Emma said quietly. "I need you. So you're going to wake up, you're going to survive, and we're going to figure out how to live in the wreckage of what we've built." Still nothing. Emma stayed there all night, holding Dante's hand, talking to him, even though he couldn't hear, telling him about the pregnancy symptoms, about how she'd started craving pickles at 3 a.m., about how their daughter was already stubborn, keeping Emma awake with movement that felt like tiny earthquakes, about how terrified Emma was of doing this alone. Dawn came through the hospital window, turning the room golden. Emma's eyes burned from exhaustion, but she couldn't sleep, couldn't look away from Dante's face, waiting for any sign of change. At 6 a.m., his fingers twitched. Emma's breath caught. "Dante?" His eyes opened slowly, unfocused, struggling against medication and pain. "Emma." His voice was barely a whisper, rough as gravel. "I'm here." Emma moved closer, her hand tightening around his. "You're okay. You're in the hospital. You had surgery? Vincent?" "Dead." Emma's voice was flat. "You killed him. Both shots hit. His men scattered. It's over." Something shifted in Dante's expression, not relief, something darker. Like he'd been expecting this moment for years, and now that it had arrived, he didn't know how to feel. "The baby?" he asked. "Fine. We're both fine." Emma pressed his hand against her stomach. "Feel that?" "She's moving." Dante's eyes filled with tears. His hand spread across Emma's belly, trembling. "She's real. Very real and very stubborn, just like her father." Dante's mouth twitched into something that might have been a smile if he hadn't been in so much pain. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For everything I put you through. For buying you. For dragging you into my war. For almost dying." "Stop." Emma leaned down until her forehead pressed against his. "You saved my mother. You protected me. You fought for us. That's not something to apologize for. I made you into a target." "You made me into a survivor." Emma's voice firmed. "I'm not the same person who signed that contract, Dante. I'm not desperate and broken anymore. I'm someone who fought back, who stood in a warehouse facing down Vincent Calabrese and didn't blink. You didn't make me weak. You made me strong enough to fight." Dante's hand came up to touch her face. "I love you." "I know." Emma kissed him gently, careful not to hurt him. "Now rest. You need to heal. Will you stay?"
Try and make me leave.
Dante's eyes closed again, but this time Emma wasn't afraid. His breathing was steady. The monitor showed improvement. He was going to survive. They both were. The next week passed in a blur of hospital routines and slow recovery. Dante improved daily, regaining strength, breathing on his own, finally sitting up without looking like he might pass out. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Emma never left his side. She slept in the hospital chair, ate terrible cafeteria food, and spent hours just watching Dante breathe, reassuring herself that he was still alive. Luca visited every day with updates. Vincent's organization had collapsed without him. His men either fled the city or offered to work for Dante. The Southside territories were being absorbed. The war was over. Chicago belonged to Dante Moretti, but the victory felt hollow. Emma watched her husband struggle to move without pain, watched him flinch every time someone entered the room too quickly, watched the nightmares that made him wake up gasping. Killing Vincent hadn't erased the trauma. It had just ended the immediate threat. The psychological damage would take longer to heal. On the 8th day, the doctors cleared Dante to go home. Emma helped him dress, his movements still slow and careful, and watched Luca coordinate the transport like they were moving ahead of state instead of a wounded crime lord. The penthouse felt different when they returned, empty, sterile, like a place that had witnessed violence and never quite recovered. Dante sank onto the couch with a grimace. Emma sat beside him, close enough to touch but giving him space to breathe. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now we rebuild." Dante's voice was tired. Vincent's territories need management. His operations need restructuring. The families that worked with him need reassurance that I'm not going to retaliate. That sounds like a lot of work for someone who just got shot. I'll delegate. Dante glanced at her. Luca can handle most of it. Sal knows the operations. I just need to be the face, show strength, prove I'm still in control. And what about us? Emma's hand moved to her stomach. What about the baby? Dante was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached over and pulled a folder from the table, the same folder he'd given Emma 9 months ago. The contract. I'm burning this, he said quietly. Emma's breath caught. What? The contract. The deal. All of it. Dante opened the folder, pulled out the pages. You don't owe me 3 years anymore. You don't owe me anything. You're free to leave whenever you want. Dante. I mean it, Emma. His eyes met hers. I bought you because I needed a wife. Someone reliable. Someone with a reason to stay. But that's not what this is anymore. And I won't keep you trapped in a contract when what I want is for you to choose me. Emma stared at the papers in his hands, the contract that had started everything. That had brought her to this penthouse, this life, this man. What if I don't want to leave? She asked quietly. Dante's expression cracked. Then stay. Not because you have to, but because you want to. Emma took the contract from his hands. She looked at the pages, all the clauses and stipulations and legal terminology that had defined their relationship for 9 months. Then she ripped them in half. I don't want a contract, she said. I want a marriage, a real one, with fights and compromises and 2 people who chose each other instead of being forced together. Dante's hand came up to touch her face. I can do that. Can you? Can you stop treating me like an asset you need to protect and start treating me like a partner? I don't know. Dante's voice was raw. I've spent 12 years controlling everything around me because that's how I stayed alive. Letting go of that control. Trusting someone else to be strong. That's terrifying. Then be terrified. Emma leaned closer. Be scared and uncertain and out of control. But do it with me. Not for me. With me. Dante kissed her then, slow and careful and full of things he couldn't say out loud. When he pulled away, his eyes were wet. I'll try, he whispered. I promise I'll try. That's all I'm asking. They sat together in silence, the torn contract between them, and Emma felt something shift. Not perfection, not some fairy tale ending where everything was suddenly fixed, just 2 damaged people choosing each other despite everything they'd been through. It was enough. The months that followed were hard in ways Emma hadn't anticipated. Dante threw himself into rebuilding his empire, working 18-hour days despite the bullet wound that still made him wince.
Emma watched him push himself too hard, knowing she couldn't stop him, but trying anyway. They fought. Real fights. About security protocols Emma thought were excessive. About Dante's refusal to delegate. About Emma's insistence on visiting her mother without armed guards. But they also learned to compromise. Dante started trusting Emma's instincts. Emma started understanding why Dante needed the control. Slowly, painfully, they built something that looked like a real marriage. Emma's pregnancy progressed. Morning sickness gave way to constant exhaustion. Her body changed, curves becoming rounder, movements becoming slower. Dante treated her like blown glass, which drove Emma crazy until he explained that every time he looked at her, he saw Maria, his sister, the one who died carrying a child in this same war. "I'm not her," Emma said gently. "I'm stronger than you think." "I know." Dante's hand rested on her stomach. "That's what scares me." At 20 weeks, they found out definitively they were having a daughter. Dante cried when he heard the heartbeat during the ultrasound. Full breakdown, shoulders shaking, face buried in Emma's shoulder while she held him and whispered that everything would be okay. He started building a nursery the next day, not hiring contractors, doing it himself, painting walls, assembling furniture, creating something with his scarred hands that wasn't destruction for once. Emma watched him work and felt something dangerous settle in her chest. Hope. Catherine's treatment continued successfully. The experimental therapy was working beyond all expectations. By Emma's 6th month of pregnancy, her mother was in remission, clean scans, no sign of cancer. They celebrated at the hospital with cheap champagne Catherine wasn't supposed to drink and take out Chinese food. Emma cried. Catherine cried. Even Dante's eyes were suspiciously wet. "Thank you," Catherine said to Dante, "for keeping your promise, for saving my life." "Thank you for raising a daughter strong enough to save mine," Dante replied. Emma watched them, her mother and her husband, and realized that somehow, impossibly, she'd built a family from the wreckage of desperation. At 32 weeks, Emma went into early labor. It was 3 a.m. She woke to cramping so intense she couldn't breathe. Dante woke immediately, saw her face, and had her in the car within 5 minutes. The drive to the hospital was the longest of Emma's life. Contractions hit every 2 minutes. Dante held her hand and drove like the devil was chasing them, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. They made it to the hospital with 20 minutes to spare. Emma barely remembers the delivery. Just pain and pressure and Dante's voice in her ear telling her she was strong, she was perfect, she could do this. And then a baby's cry. High and furious and absolutely perfect. The nurse placed a tiny, red-faced infant on Emma's chest. "It's a girl." Emma looked down at her daughter. 6 pounds, 2 ounces of absolute perfection, and felt her entire world realign. This was worth it. All of it. The contract, the war, the terror and trauma, and nights spent wondering if she'd survive. This child was worth everything. Dante stood beside the bed, staring at his daughter like he'd never seen anything so miraculous. His hand shook as he reached out to touch her tiny fist. "She's real," he whispered. "Very real." Emma guided his hand closer. "You want to hold her?" "I don't know how. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." The nurse helped position the baby in Dante's arms. He held her like she might shatter, his expression a mixture of terror and absolute awe. "Hi," he said quietly. "I'm your dad. I'm probably going to mess this up a lot, but I promise I'll try. I'll try so hard to be someone you can be proud of." The baby yawned, utterly unimpressed. Emma laughed through her tears. "She's got your attitude." "That's your fault," Dante said. But he was smiling, really smiling. Not the controlled expression he showed the world, but something genuine and unguarded. Emma had never seen him look so happy. They named her Sophia, after Dante's grandmother, he said, a woman who'd been strong and fierce and had raised her family in the middle of chaos without breaking, just like Emma. The first weeks of parenthood were hell. Sophia cried constantly. Emma's body ached from delivery. Dante had no idea how to change a diaper, and Emma had to teach him at 4 a.m. while they were both delirious from exhaustion. But slowly, they found a rhythm.
Dante would walk Sofia around the penthouse at 2 a.m., singing Italian lullabies in a voice rough from disuse. Emma would watch from the doorway, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. Catherine visited every week, recovering strength daily, spoiling her granddaughter with toys and books and stories about Emma's childhood. Dante's men, the terrifying criminals who'd fought in a war, would stop by to meet Sofia and turn into complete softies the moment she grabbed their fingers. Even Luca, the ex-military enforcer, would hold Sofia and talk to her about tactical formations until Emma kicked him out for corrupting their daughter with combat strategy. Life wasn't perfect. Emma still had nightmares about the warehouse. Dante still flinched at unexpected noises. They both carried trauma that would take years to process. But they were building something, not the fairy tale Emma had dreamed about as a kid. Something more complicated, more real. A family forged in fire and desperation, and two people choosing each other every single day despite everything trying to pull them apart. 6 months after Sofia's birth, Dante took Emma back to the courthouse, where they'd first gotten married. "What are we doing here?" Emma asked, confused. "Getting married," Dante said simply. "The right way this time." He pulled out a new contract, not legal documents, but handwritten vows on paper that looked like it had been drafted and redrafted 100 times. "I, Dante Moretti, promise to love Emma Moretti, not because I bought her, but because she chose me despite every reason not to. I promise to trust her strength instead of fearing it. I promise to be her partner, not her warden. I promise to build a life with her where our daughter can grow up seeing love instead of contracts. And I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the woman who saved me in more ways than she'll ever know." Emma's eyes blurred with tears. She pulled out her own vows, written on the back of the torn contract, because Emma had a sense of irony. "I, Emma Moretti, promise to love Dante Moretti not because he saved my mother, but because he taught me I was strong enough to save myself. I promise to fight with him instead of against him. I promise to choose him every day, even on the days I want to strangle him. I promise to build a family from the wreckage of what we started with. And I promise to never let him forget that the best thing he ever bought was a terrified girl in an alley who became the woman strong enough to stand beside him." Dante kissed her before she finished reading, deep and desperate and full of everything they'd survived. When they pulled apart, the judge was smiling. "By the power vested in me by the state of Illinois, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again." "About time," Emma said. Dante laughed, really laughed, and kissed her again. A year later, Emma stood in the nursery watching Sofia sleep. 14 months old now, starting to walk, already showing the stubborn determination of both her parents. Dante appeared behind her, arms wrapping around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. "What are you thinking?" he asked quietly. "About how far we've come." Emma leaned back against him. "A year ago, I was locked in a penthouse, pregnant, terrified for my life. Now I'm standing in a nursery watching our daughter sleep in a city where we don't have to look over our shoulders anymore." "Vincent's territory is fully integrated," Dante said. "His remaining men either work for me or left the city. The families have accepted the new structure. For the first time in 12 years, Chicago is stable. What about you?" Emma turned to face him. "Are you stable?" Dante considered the question seriously. "I'm better. The nightmares are less frequent. The need to control everything is still there, but manageable. Therapy helps." Emma smiled. Getting Dante to agree to therapy had taken months of arguments, but he'd finally admitted he couldn't process the trauma alone. "And us?" she asked. "Us?" Dante pulled her closer. "We're complicated, messy. Sometimes we fight like we're still figuring out who we are to each other. But we're real, Emma. This isn't a contract or a performance. This is a marriage between two people who chose each other despite everything." "I'd choose you again," Emma said quietly. "Even knowing everything that would happen. I'd still sign that contract." "I wouldn't." Dante's hand came up to touch her face. "If I could go back, I'd do it differently. I'd ask instead of buying. I'd court you properly instead of trapping you. You'd be a different person," Emma interrupted. "And I fell in love with who you are, not who you wish you'd been." Dante's eyes filled with tears. "How did I get so lucky?" "You didn't. You paid $500,000 for my mother's treatment." Emma grinned. "Best investment you ever made." Dante laughed and kissed her, slow and sweet, and full of promises they'd actually keep this time. In the nursery, Sophia stirred but didn't wake. Safe, loved, protected. Not by contracts or armed guards or fear, but by two parents who'd learned to trust each other, who'd survived a war and come out stronger, who'd built a family from desperation and transformed it into something worth fighting for. Emma thought about the girl she'd been 18 months ago, working graveyard shifts at a convenience store, drowning in debt, watching her mother die. That girl would have never believed this ending was possible, but Emma had learned something important in the months since signing that contract. The most dangerous thing about Dante Moretti was never his violence. It was how completely he loved. And somewhere between captivity and chaos, between fear and devotion, they had transformed each other. The cage became a home. The contract became a family. And the monster became a man worth loving. Not because he was perfect, but because he was real. Outside the nursery window, Chicago glittered like broken glass turned into something beautiful. Emma pressed her hand against her stomach, 3 months pregnant again, though they hadn't told anyone yet, and smiled. Life wasn't the fairy tale she dreamed about. It was better. It was real. And it was theirs. In the living room, Dante's phone buzzed. Business. Always business. But for the first time in 12 years, Dante ignored it. He stayed with Emma and Sophia, choosing family over empire, love over control. Because Dante Moretti had learned something important too. Power meant nothing if you had no one to share it with. Violence solved problems, but love built futures. And the girl he'd bought with a contract had become the woman who saved his soul. Emma looked at her husband, scarred, complicated, trying so hard to be better, and felt gratitude so profound it hurt. Not for the money, not for the security, but for the choice. Every day they chose each other. Every day they built something stronger than contracts or fear. Every day they proved that even the darkest beginnings could transform into light. Sophia woke up crying. Emma moved to pick her up, but Dante beat her there, scooping his daughter into his arms with practiced ease. "Hey, baby girl," he murmured. "Did you have a bad dream?" Sophia buried her face in his shoulder, hiccuping small sobs. Emma watched them, her husband and her daughter, and felt her heart do that complicated thing again. This was her family, built from desperation, forged in violence, transformed by love. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Years later, when Sophia was old enough to ask how her parents met, Emma would tell her a version of the truth. "Your father made me an offer I couldn't refuse," she'd say, and somehow, in the middle of all the chaos, we fell in love. "Was it scary?" Sophia would ask. "Terrifying," Emma would admit, "but also the bravest thing I've ever done." Why? Because loving someone means trusting them with your heart. And trusting someone means accepting they might break it. But your father and I, we chose to trust each other anyway, and that choice made all the difference. Sophia would think about that. Then she'd ask, "Would you do it again?" And Emma would look at Dante, older now, silver threading through his dark hair, the scars on his hands faded but never gone, and smile. "Every single time," she'd say, "I'd choose him every single time." Because that was the truth Emma had learned. Love wasn't about perfect beginnings. It was about choosing to stay through the hard parts. About building something real from broken pieces. About two people deciding that together was worth more than alone. Emma Moretti had started as a girl desperate enough to sign a contract with a monster. She'd become a woman strong enough to stand beside a man and help him become something better. That transformation, from captive to partner, from transaction to love, was the real story. Not the violence, not the war, but the quiet moments in between. The hand-holding in hospitals. The whispered promises in the dark. The choice to stay when leaving would have been easier. That was the story worth telling, and Emma would tell it to her daughter with pride. Because in the end, Emma Vale had walked into an alley desperate and drowning, and Emma Moretti had walked out the other side with a family worth fighting for. The contract was gone. The cage was broken. The monster was just a man. And the love they'd built was real enough to last a lifetime. That was the ending Emma had earned. Not perfect. Not easy. But absolutely completely hers.